Acetaminophen.
Anti-Semitism.
Global infiltrator.
Well, hello.
Welcome to TYT. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian. And as always, we've got a massive show ahead for you all today. We're gonna talk a little bit about Tucker Carlson's response to all of the weird backlash he's been getting over his speech at Charlie Kirk's memorial. There are some ridiculous and spurious claims of anti-Semitism baked into his speech. We're gonna talk about whether or not there's any truth to that. We're also going to discuss the shooting that took place at an ICE detention facility in Texas. That is yet another example of tragedy of political violence in this country that should be condemned. And if ever there was a perfect example of how political violence leads to nothing but more harm, this is it. So we'll get into those details. And I also want to talk a little bit about what's been going down over at the UN. For the first time in 58 years, you have a Syrian leader, a former Al-Qaeda combatant, addressing the UN General Assembly. I think it's weird, I think it's crazy. I especially think it's crazy that the United States has such a friendly, warm relationship with someone who is part of a terrorist group that carried out 9/11, the largest terrorist attack on US soil. So I'll get into the details on that in the first hour as well. In the second hour, Cenk Uygur will be joining me to talk about other topics, including some unfair, ridiculous attacks he's been getting over the fact that he interviewed and pretty viciously debated David Duke years ago. He did not agree with anything David Duke had to say, but he's still being smeared for that interview even today. So we'll get to that later in the second hour as well. As always, just want to encourage you to like and share the stream. If you're watching us live, it's a free and easy way to help support the show. You can also support us by becoming a paying member for a very low price, tyt.com/join to become one. All right, let's get to our first topic. Another day, another act of senseless political violence in the United States. I really hope that this doesn't continue, and it at the moment feels like there's a bit of a political violence contagion in the United States. The latest example involves two ICE detainees that had been killed this morning by a gunman in Dallas. Now, the FBI alleges that the shooter wrote at least one anti-ICE message on their ammunition. So this story obviously broke today. It's still developing. I'm sure we're gonna learn more details, but I just wanna warn you all, it is the first day that this story has been reported. Things tend to change, so just be willing to understand that the details as we know them now are subject to change, similar to how the details of Charlie Kirk's assassination changed, and we'll see what happens. But here's what we know as it stands right now. So the Dallas ICE field office is where this shooting took place, and it usually holds detainees for less than 24 hours before they are then sent off to a long-term ICE facility for detention. However, in July, the Dallas Morning News reported that families said in recent months that people were being detained in the field office for days and were not provided adequate resources. One woman told an NBC affiliate in Dallas that as many as 30 detainees were being housed in a single cell. So there has been some media attention on this particular facility, and in fact, there had been other acts of violence targeted toward it. We'll get to those details in just a minute. But almost exactly 1 month ago, a man walked into the same field office and claimed that he had a bomb in his backpack. Now, luckily, no one was harmed. This individual was arrested and still remains in custody today. Now, let's fast forward to the shooting that occurred today and the details that we know as the story stands at this moment. 29-year-old Joshua Hahn has been identified as the gunman, as the shooter. And just before 7 a.m. local time, Hahn began shooting indiscriminately at the ICE facility, according to ICE's deputy director. So Han is a complete moron who is engaging in a senseless act of violence. And I say senseless because when you're indiscriminately firing your weapon, what do you think you're gonna accomplish with that? First of all, meeting anything that you disagree with politically with violence is beyond counterproductive and stupid. So I do not in any way agree with any political violence. It's not helping any situation, and in fact, creates yet another excuse for the government to tamp down on our freedom of expression, freedom of rights. There is never a tragedy that the government is not willing to use for its own purposes. So Han is just not helping any situation here whatsoever, okay? So again, just before 7 a.m. local time, Han began shooting indiscriminately at the ICE facility, and that's according to ICE's deputy director. Now, Han shot across the entire length of the office. Not a single ICE agent was harmed, and I'm happy about that. But what I'm very angry about and very upset about is the fact that 2 detainees have lost their lives, have been killed by someone carrying out an act of political violence as it appears at this moment. It was senseless, and detainees ended up losing their lives as a result. There's another detainee who is in the hospital in critical condition. So when law enforcement found Han, he had already shot himself. So the gunman is also deceased, in addition to the 2 detainees who were killed as a result of this indiscriminate firing. FBI Director Kash Patel also posted the following image on X, and if you look closely on the 4th bullet, you'll see in blue writing it says anti-ICE, and so that has been disclosed to the public as evidence that this was a politically motivated attack. And if this person, if the gunman had a problem with how ICE was carrying out their duties, how they were treating detainees, well, he's got a funny way of showing it, considering the people who ended up losing their lives were ICE detainees. So Patel stated that these unspent shell casings with the phrase anti-ICE written on them were recovered at the scene of the crime. And for that reason, Patel wrote that the shooter had an ideological motive. So CNN also reported today that Han voted in the Democratic primary back in 2020, but has not voted since. As far as a criminal record, there's really not much to share with you on that. All we know is that he had been charged with delivering marijuana dating back to 2016, and he actually pleaded guilty. And the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem shared more on X, writing that for months we've been warning politicians and the media to tone down their rhetoric about ICE law enforcement before someone was killed. These horrendous killings must serve as a wake-up call to the far left that their rhetoric about ICE has consequences. Comparing ICE day in, day out to the Nazi Gestapo, the secret police, and slave patrols has consequences. The men and women of ICE are fathers and mothers, sons and daughters. They get up every morning and try to make our communities safer. Like everyone else, we just want to go home to our families at night. The violence and dehumanization of these men and women who are simply enforcing the law must stop. We are praying for the victims and their families, but Secretary Noem understands that they're not just simply doing their jobs. The way that ICE has operated under the Trump administration is very different from previous administrations, and that includes Republican administrations as well. We as Americans do have the right to be aggressively critical of our own government if we see that they are violating constitutional rights, violating human rights. There had been a lot of criticism toward ICE over the fact that in some cases they engaged in raids where they were not uniformed, they were wearing masks, and if you don't properly identify yourself, people are going to be terrified and assume that it's a criminal essentially kidnapping random people off the streets. Now, I'm happy to see that ICE officials are now wearing their uniforms. Listen, I know that they're being met with violence, so if they need to wear masks, fine, but you need to identify that you're actually legitimate law enforcement. Having an open and honest conversation about that is not inciting violence. Inciting violence is when you direct your audience or when you go online and you tell people that you should do very specific violent things to ICE agents. And anyone who is inciting violence in that way absolutely should suffer consequences, because they are creating a situation that is very dangerous, not just for the ICE agents, but clearly for innocent bystanders, for detainees, for all sorts of people. And in the long run, could be used in nefarious ways by the federal government to violate and infringe on our First Amendment rights. Political violence is so stupid. Aside from being deeply immoral, it is so utterly stupid. I don't care how angry anyone gets at me for speaking out against political violence. Go ahead and get mad. When has it accomplished anything in the United States? It's just so stupid, it really is. But on top of that, I have a problem with people like Secretary Noem and other government officials coming out and essentially saying, you gotta calm down the rhetoric, don't be too critical of the federal government, of law enforcement. No, if they're doing something wrong, we are gonna be critical. Now, if there's an issue with us being critical of the federal government, well then I really do think that the democratic norms that we've enjoyed in this country really are under threat. But don't fall prey to these types of narratives, whether it's coming from the Biden administration, which effectively censored some of the skeptics involved in what we were hearing about COVID. Don't be willing to sell your rights away because the other side is engaging in rhetoric you don't like. Don't fall for it, just don't. But at the same time, those who are in fact inciting violence, and I think we all know that when we see it, should be condemned, because violence doesn't carry any type of political effectiveness in this country. What did this idiot accomplish other than killing 2 people and taking his own life? So this story is gonna continue developing. We'll see what else we learn about it. But if you wanna talk about dehumanization, Secretary Noem, let's talk about how immigrants have been dehumanized in this country as well, and how many of them have been met with violence by ordinary private citizens. When before the election, you have JD Vance acknowledging, the vice president now, but back then candidate JD Vance, acknowledging that they were totally making up that Haitians were stealing people's pets and eating them, because at least it drew attention to the immigration problem in that local community. You can draw attention to that immigration problem without smearing people and causing hysteria and anger and rage against immigrants. So if you want to talk about irresponsible rhetoric, I would venture to say that there's a lot of blame to go around. And in the end, the people who end up losing the most are the American people, as government officials from both sides of the aisle, depending on who's in charge, are just chomping at the bit to censor people and silence them. So don't let that happen. We are allowed and we should be critical of the government when they engage in activities that we find reprehensible or unconstitutional. It's that simple. And we should engage in debates about that, because not everyone agrees, but that's fine. We can debate about it. Inciting violence is something very specific. So if we're gonna go after those inciting violence, that's a different story. You're gonna go after those who are critical of the government, even aggressively so, I've got a problem with that. So we'll give you more details as the story develops. For now, I'm gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we've got a massive segment about the flotilla carrying humanitarian aid to Gaza and how it's being attacked by Israeli drones. We'll also talk about Tucker Carlson's response to his critics after he gave a speech at Charlie Kirk's memorial. That and more coming up, don't miss it. All right, everyone. Listen, I'm going based off of what officials are saying about the story I just reported. Yes, our government is known to lie to us and they are untrustworthy, and we are in a terrible environment right now where we don't know what to believe. So I am both very sympathetic to people who are questioning what we're seeing in the reporting, and it puts me in a difficult place, because what am I gonna do? Just talk about what I suspect? I can't do that. I can't speculate. I have to go based off of what's being said by those in charge. And it's difficult because I don't fully trust them, to be honest. But anyway, all right, so let's just get to some of these comments. Michael Napin says, new Anna Solo, pretty new dress. This dress is 10 years old. Like, kid you not. I just haven't worn it in a really long time. I'm just happy I fit in it still. Navinik says, writes anti-ICE, but no law enforcement was hurt. Was the shooter trying to target the janitors? If FBI still had DEI hires, they would have told them that the slogans are F-ICE, abolish ICE, not anti-ICE. So, you know, Art Guy also makes a point about how the lettering looks. That anti-ICE phrase could have been written on with a Sharpie after the shooting. I wouldn't put it past these people to manufacture outrage. I kid you not, I had the same thought, but as someone who's just trying to give you guys the details, they have not been confirmed, but the details as they're being told to us by the feds. This is what they're telling us. And it's up to you to decide whether or not you find these claims credible. It's also the first day. This is the day of the shooting. I'm sure other details will emerge and we can make a judgment call as to whether or not we, find the claims being made, by authorities credible. But as Helen 007 says, 007 says, Patel has proven himself untrustworthy, and I agree with you on that. So it's so hard to get you guys accurate information, and I don't want to be a stooge for people who might be lying. We're just gonna have to wait and see, but please bear with me and know that I'm doing my best here. We gotta get back to the show. See you there. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the show. Anna Kasparian with you. I want to get right to our next story, and then I've got a super chat about our first story that I'll read to you afterward. Let's talk a little bit about the humanitarian aid flotilla that has been attacked by Israel.
The flotilla is reported to have come under drone attack off the coast of Crete. The people on board posted this on social media. The global submerged flotilla said more than a dozen explosions were heard around the flotilla as it sailed off Greece late on Tuesday, with damage caused by unidentified objects dropped on deck.
Israeli drone strikes have been targeting flotillas carrying humanitarian aid for starving Palestinians trapped in Gaza. And things have gotten so dangerous for those seeking to help the victims of Israel's genocide that Italy has now sent a Navy vessel, while condemning the attacks somewhat. And I'll explain what I mean by somewhat in just a moment. Now, here is one of the people who is part of this mission, essentially sharing her experience as these attacks were underway.
We just heard another attack right now. We know of 5 vessels that have been attacked by a bomb. You can clearly hear it, and again, another bomb was released. We do not know which vessel it is at this very moment. Raise the alarm. We are in international waters carrying only humanitarian aid. We have no weapons. We pose no threat to anyone.
I want to reiterate what you just heard in that video. These are people trying to get humanitarian aid to people in Gaza, which has been leveled, a population of people who have been killed through aerial bombardments, who have been shot at as they seek humanitarian aid from 3 humanitarian aid hubs in the entirety of the Gaza Strip. These are people who have been brutalized for nearly 2 years straight. And there are luckily still some people in the international community. I mean, I can't unfortunately include our own pathetic government in this group, but there's luckily still people who are able to see the humanity of the Palestinian people in Gaza, and they are risking their lives to try to get them food and water. That is what they're doing. They are unarmed. They're not trying to go to war. They're approaching in peace. And Israel responds in the only way Israel knows how, through violence and intimidation. Imagine thinking you're the hero as you target unarmed people day in and day out for nearly 2 years straight. And I'm just talking about the current genocide. That's what Israel's legacy is now. It is unbelievable to me. So let's get to some more details as we know it. The global Samud flotilla is using an estimated 50 civilian boats in an attempt to break Israel's blockade of Gaza to try to get them humanitarian aid. Now, Reuters is reporting that Italy sent a Navy ship to the flotilla's assistance after the vessels were attacked by 12 drones in international waters 30 nautical miles off the Greek island of Gavdos. The drones came in the middle of the night, dropping stun grenades and itching powder, damaging the sails of some boats, according to 2 Italian members of the European Parliament aboard the flotilla. So you saw this example in the first video, and I want you to just see this again. And imagine meeting people or responding to people who are just trying to save other people's lives with this type of act, with this type of violence. Miraculously, no one has been wounded, no one has been physically harmed. At least that's what the reporting indicates right now, and I hope it remains that way. But clearly, at the very least, best case scenario, Israel is using intimidation tactics because, God forbid, anyone try to save the Palestinian people from the mass murder, mass slaughter that's being carried out by the Israeli Defense Forces at this very moment. Every day, an average of 80 people are killed in Gaza, many of whom happen to be women, children, elderly people. One of our viewers, Independent Outlaw, writes in and says, "Hi, Anna and Cenk. The Gaza flotillas were attacked because Israel fears further exposure of its war crimes. 145 countries recognize Palestine's historic rights. Spain and Italy has now planned to deploy the Navy to protect the aid flotilla ships. Meanwhile, the United States continues to enable extremist Zionists who are openly rejecting a Palestinian state." And you're right about that. Now, I have to say, I wasn't fully satisfied with the response from Italy. I'm glad that they're sending a Navy vessel to ensure that people are okay. But the statements coming from Italy's leadership leave much to be desired. I will admit that. But first, here's another example of the type of intimidation that's being carried out, although I will admit this is a little bit hilarious. So Annalisa Corrado of the Democratic Party in Italy said this in a video: "Onboard radios started playing very loud ABBA music. We thought it was a joke, but no, it was the first act of intimidation to tell us they were close enough to get into our radio systems." So I had the same reaction, right? You're using the ABBA music to basically flex some muscle. But at the end of the day, the message that's being sent here is a very clear message. It is a message of intimidation, and it was followed with a drone attack that luckily didn't get anyone hurt. So the attack lasted around 3 hours. And again, I'm gonna note again that everyone seems okay. All passengers were safe after the drones exploded over the vessels. A Greek Coast Guard official told Reuters that members of the flotilla contacted them around 2 a.m. So that's at 2300 hours to inform them of the incident. When approached by the European Union's border agency Frontex, however, the flotilla said it did not require assistance, the official added. But this isn't the first time the flotilla has been targeted by Israel. So earlier this month, the flotilla blamed Israel for other drone strikes on its boats while they were moored in a Tunisian port. Israel, of course, I mean, they didn't respond to those accusations because who would hold them accountable if they don't? The United States? All the other countries that have decided to do the symbolic gesture of recognizing a Palestinian state, but still ship out weapons and weapon parts to Israel. Canada being one of those countries, by the way. Talk is real cheap. Symbolic gestures, people aren't falling for it anymore. We've been governed by symbolic gestures endlessly in the United States, at least. I'm not buying it. What are you gonna do outside of acknowledging that, Palestinians are humans who should have the right to self-determination? So let's get to Italy for a second. So in regard to the recent attacks, Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, has urged the flotilla to essentially accept this plan, this offer, where they would hand over all of the humanitarian aid to the Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem in Cyprus, Greece, and allow them to deliver the aid. She alleges that Israel is open to this plan. Now, I dug into this a little more, and what would happen is Greece would ship over the humanitarian aid to Israel, where it would then be destroyed. If not by the Israeli government, certainly by the Israeli settlers. And there's endless video of that online that you can check out for yourself. So excuse me if the flotilla is not interested in handing over the humanitarian aid so it could then be destroyed and not make its way to the Palestinian people. But Meloni is upset that people are trying to help those who are just being brutalized and starved to death. She says that the flotilla is gratuitous, dangerous, and irresponsible. What about the leveling of Gaza? What about the mass slaughter of innocent people in the Gaza Strip? We don't think that's gratuitous, dangerous, and irresponsible? I would argue that's the root of the problem. People who are trying to do something about it in lieu of an international community that gives a damn are not the problem here. The belligerent government with its belligerent military that is now guilty of endless atrocities against innocent people, I would argue they're the root of the problem. I would argue that they're the ones who are being irresponsible, dangerous. And the United States government and some of the citizens within this nation that continue to provide cover for it, they're genuinely the root of the problem. This is not good for the United States. The fact that we are supporting, this now multi-front war in the Middle East, or at least we're supporting the country carrying out a multi-front war in the Middle East, does not bode well for the United States. And it's my right as an American to make that clear, to air my grievances about what's going on here. This is crazy. It is isolating us in the worst possible ways from the international community. We have no leg to stand on when it comes to how other countries operate, whether or not they're valuing human rights. Who the hell are we to ever utter a single word or offer any judgment about how any other country is behaving as we aid and abet a literal modern day genocide that's playing out in real time and it's streamed online for all of us to see? This is not made up. We all see it. All these billionaires in the US working overtime to control every single media platform imaginable because maybe they can convince us to unsee everything that we've all seen for ourselves with our own two eyes over the last 2 years. It's not gonna work. Guido Crosetto, that is his name. He's Italy's defense minister. Was equally pathetic as he both condemned the attack but referred to the attacker as currently unidentified perpetrators. Why are you pretending like we don't know it's Israel? Like what, why? What's the point in that? I don't know if there's just this weird trend of international leaders having a humiliation fetish. But man, there's been one leader after another just raising their hand and offering themselves up for humiliation. You think we're stupid? It was Israel. And we know it's Israel. Israel has repeatedly criticized the flotilla, accusing its activists of complicity with the Hamas militant group, right? Okay, because if you want to help literal children who are being starved to death, you obviously support terrorists. In a statement, the Global Samud Flotilla said the following: multiple drones, unidentified objects dropped, communications jammed, and explosions heard from a number of boats. We are witnessing these psychological operations firsthand right now, but we will not be intimidated. These are some of the bravest people on the planet. So the threats to either destroy your life if you speak out against Israel, or even threaten violence against you if you defend the Palestinian people and their right to be treated as human beings, their right at self-determination. That's real, that's real. And I know it's real because I have experienced it firsthand. It's come in many forms. It's come in the form of trying to intimidate me by trying to get family members fired from their jobs, which honestly, when people would claim that, before all of this happened, when people would claim that, I would kind of roll my eyes because it kind of played into what I thought was a trope. But when you are critical of a foreign government and you're met with the type of threats that I have been seeing lately, okay, well, I guess it wasn't made up. I guess you really do put yourself on the line if you're willing to be critical of Israel's conduct. I had intended to go to ArabCon this week, and I was looking forward to it. I was gonna be interviewed. I was looking forward to watching other speeches. But there have been so many specific threats of violence against me that I had to rethink whether or not it makes sense for me to go to that conference. And after thinking about it deeply, and after witnessing the horrific assassination of Charlie Kirk while he was at an event, and also after taking stock of the security measures and whether or not the environment makes me feel safe enough, I decided it would be irresponsible for me to go. And I feel really torn up about that. Because not only was I looking forward to it, by not going, I feel like I'm letting the bad guys win. But what I also know is that it doesn't matter if you're an American, because if you do get hurt, if you do get killed, because of the fact that you're critical of our special ally, I don't trust our government to look out for you. The only thing I've seen our federal government do, and in some cases state and local government do, is engage in punishment of those, of Americans who have been critical of Israel. And if I can't rely on my own government to protect me, or at least punish the perpetrators who might cause harm to me as I'm at a conference, I just don't feel safe going. That's how bad things are at this point. So I want to apologize to all the attendees for ArabCon this year. I really wish I could go, but I just don't feel safe going, considering the specific threats. And I don't want to get into the specific threats. I've been getting them for a while, and they've gotten a lot more aggressive recently. So that's the reality of the situation. If you don't see how our unwavering support for Israel, how damaging it is to our country, I just don't know what it would take. I really don't know what it would take. Our freedom of expression is under threat as a result. We don't trust our government in many instances as a result. I don't feel safe in my own country as a result. How many American citizens have been killed by the IDF already? Latest story involved 4 American citizens in Lebanon who got killed in an Israeli airstrike, 5 people in total. 4 of them were American citizens, 3 of them were children, were kids. The president hasn't issued a single statement about it. Not one. You have American citizens who visited their family members in the West Bank and got killed by settlers, Israeli settlers, and the government does not care. Every paycheck, huge portion of my earnings goes to a federal government that I don't trust and I don't think would keep me safe. All right, let's just take a break. I'm gonna take a breather. When we come back, I wanna get into Tucker Carlson's response to his critics.
They want to make you drink Starbucks every day from now until forever.
Teddy Lucy Linda in our members section says, we have a president whose speech at the UN yesterday is being referred to by the international community as racist and incoherent. If I was any other country if it was any other country, they would have been screwed, that we have screwed over. This is the time I would attack the United States. I just think that we are engaging in foreign policy that is not in the best interest of the American people, full stop. I think it's pretty clear. Any color you like says, how about you get a TYT crew of fans to go with you and support you? It's not that. There are too many guns, and I personally have made sure to understand what the measures are, and I personally, considering how I feel like a target right now, I don't feel that it's safe enough. I'll just leave it there. And also, I don't want to ruin the conference in any way. I don't want anyone to spend any extra money on extra protection for me. I just see it as more of a problem for me to be there than to not be there. But I love you and thank you so much for even offering that. That's an amazing thing to offer. And please go to the conference. Like, I wish I was a private citizen so I could go. I don't know why people like fame. It's like the most ridiculous thing to want. It's like the worst thing to want. Anyway, Churchy de Lagonis says, stay strong, Anna. I'm so saddened to hear how your life is being affected by telling the truth about the US's special ally, and they're not gonna stop me. And that's the thing. I mean, I'm not gonna let them intimidate me from doing what I've been doing, but I have to take extra measures to keep myself safe in public. Haiku Dragon says, how much more of this is the world going to allow? Did we not learn anything from World War II? No, we didn't. We didn't learn anything from World War II, apparently. Or at least we are allowing Israel to exploit World War II to carry out the atrocities they're carrying out right now as an excuse. It's so sick. Jenks left tricep of fury says, love your blouse, Anna. That color looks great on you. Thank you, I appreciate it. Let's see if there's any Twitch. Yes, we've gotten our Twitch subs. Ryu Raul says, also I learned that the people at the Kirk event left all of their garbage and belongings there. They just expected the city to clean it all up. Well, you know, it's interesting because for those who don't believe in government, they sure do like to lean on government, especially when it comes to cleaning things up after a big event. I saw that story too. And by the way, please don't litter. Like, what is wrong with people? I see it all over LA and it like drives me nuts. No Math Dragon says Trump doesn't care. He's daydreaming about Trump Plaza Gaza. I have no doubt. Cindy Lou 87, who subscribed with Prime for 41 months. Happy Ice Cream Wednesday. Man, it's been a while. I think we've retired Ice Cream Wednesdays, but if you're eating ice cream, I hope you enjoy. All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. Anna Kasparian with you, and this is gonna take a while to get through, so I don't wanna waste any time. Let's talk a little bit about the backlash that Tucker Carlson has received after giving a speech at Charlie Kirk's memorial and what his response is to the critics.
This is my country. I mean, Bibi's running around. This is a fact. I'm not guessing about this because I talked to people he said it to, is running around the Middle East, his region, and his own country and telling people point blank, just stating it, I control the United States. I control Donald Trump. You can't use my country like some kind of disposable product. This is wrong. And if it's not wrong, tell me how it's not wrong. Why don't you stop attacking me and my trying to get family members fired, which they never stop doing.
Well, even someone as wealthy, powerful, and well-known as Tucker Carlson has become a target of all sorts of smears. And it's all a result of his open, public, overt criticism of the Israeli government. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in particular. And as I learned recently, that's naughty. You're not allowed to do that. You can be as critical of the United States government as you want, but God forbid you're ever critical of a government that is carrying out not only a genocide in the Gaza Strip, but a multi-front war because they've bombed a bunch of their neighbors and then some. But anyway, I digress. So Tucker Carlson has been attacked so much that even his speech at Charlie Kirk's memorial, in which he shared the foundational story of Christianity, was somehow twisted as anti-Semitism. Now, sorry about that. Now, I was raised Christian. So I actually saw this speech soon after he gave it, and no red flags were raised for me, not even one. And it's because he is literally sharing the foundational story of Christianity. So pay close attention to the words that he uses, and then I'll tell you more.
And it actually reminds me of my favorite story ever. So it's about 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem, and Jesus shows up and he starts talking about the people in power, and he starts doing the worst thing that you can do, which is telling the truth about people, and they hate it. And they just go bonkers, they hate it. And they become obsessed with making him stop. This guy's got to stop talking. We've got to shut this guy up. And I can just sort of picture the scene in a lamplit room with a bunch of guys sitting around eating hummus, thinking about what do we do about this guy telling the truth about us? We must make him stop talking. And there's always one guy with the bright idea, and I can just hear him say, I've got an idea, why don't we just kill him? That'll shut him up. That'll fix the problem.
So he was comparing the story of Jesus being crucified to what happened to Charlie Kirk. That Charlie Kirk's thoughts, his beliefs, his speech were so offensive to the shooter that this individual decided to assassinate him and take his life. Now, I can understand why practicing Christians might not like the comparison. But just putting that aside for a second, I want to just reiterate, I want to remind you all that at no point during that portion of his speech, or any portion of his speech, did he use the word Jewish people, Jews, Israel, nothing like that. He literally shared the foundational story of Christianity, what happened in the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. If people find that offensive in a country that supports religious liberty, I actually think we've got a problem here. So I personally thought the reaction to Tucker Carlson's speech was unhinged, to say the least. I'm gonna give you a few examples. So author and editor of Culture War magazine, E. Michael Jones, lied. You just heard the portion of the speech from Tucker Carlson that he's alluding to here. Lied and said that in plain language, Tucker Carlson is saying that the Jews killed Christ 2,000 years ago for telling the truth, and they killed Charlie Kirk last week for the same reason. Did he say the Jews killed Christ? Here's another one. And by the way, that's not what the plain language from Tucker Carlson's speech communicated. The plain language plainly stated the foundational story of Christianity. I don't know what look, I have rejected organized religion, but this is not something new that Tucker Carlson made up in an effort to smear Jewish people. That's crazy. But by the way, what happened to Judeo-Christian values if, people think that the foundational story of Christianity is unacceptable? Anyway, let me continue. Here's another one. Dinesh D'Souza says, quote, the Jews killed Christ is no more accurate than saying, quote, the Romans killed Caesar. True, Caesar was murdered by a powerful faction of Romans, but other Romans supported him and took up his cause. Only in the case of Jews is blame assigned in this way, that's anti-Semitism. He didn't say anything about Jews. Why are they putting words in his mouth? It's unhinged, but okay, let's keep going. And then Laura Loomer, of course. Why does the GOP refuse to condemn Tucker Carlson for using Charlie Kirk's memorial to suggest Jews killed Charlie Kirk? He didn't suggest that. Just exactly how many people in Congress are on the take from Qatari money? I think we should take all foreign money out of our politics. I think we should take all corporate money out of politics, Laura. Are you down with that? Something tells me you wouldn't be down with that. So the hypocritical focus on Qatar when we know that the most powerful foreign lobby in this country is the Israel lobby is laughable to me. But let's, I guess, move on from that. Notice how she wants him deplatformed. Why is he even included? Why does the GOP refuse to condemn Tucker Carlson? Why was Charlie Kirk willing to include Tucker Carlson at a Turning Point event where he gave that speech about Jeffrey Epstein? No, we should censor him. We shouldn't take him seriously. We shouldn't include him. We should silence him. And Glenn Greenwald made a really good point, how there has been a concerted effort to silence Tucker Carlson because he has been one of the most critical voices of Israel in conservative media. And for that, I think he deserves respect because I know that that's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do on the left, but it's certainly not an easy thing to do on the right. And so here's Glenn Greenwald explaining.
There's clearly an attempt to destroy your reputation, and they seized on this Charlie Kirk speech that was so benign in order to do it. How is that affecting you, if at all, and what is your strategy for dealing with it?
I was bummed out that other people's hate and narcissism, crazy narcissism, obscured what I was trying to say. It's actually not about you, sorry. It's about the world's biggest religion and my faith. If we could just talk about me for 1 second or talk about Jesus for 1 second. So look, I never want to fight about Israel, ever. I'm actually pretty moderate on the subject, I think. Always like going there. I know a lot of Israelis, always liked,
you never really talked about it before October 7th. You never really talked about it before October 7th, but it was shoved on the front burner.
Exactly, it's like, this is my country.
Yeah, he's right. This is our country, and we get to be critical of a foreign government that is not at all indicative of the character and the morals of the Jewish people. I want to be clear about that. The conduct of a foreign government should be open for debate, especially since we're talking about a foreign government. We're able to talk about the conduct of our own government. That's what makes America great. That we are allowed to engage in open, free speech and expression. So these weird attempts to smear Tucker Carlson over, he's a devout Christian. So he's not allowed to have his own religious liberty and his religious beliefs. That's gonna be twisted into some sort of anti-Semitic smear. That's ridiculous. But he was really cooking in this next clip. And what he says here, I really felt to my core. Take a look.
This is my country. I don't own the country, but I'm a shareholder in the country. I'm an American. And you can't use my country like some kind of disposable product. You just can't. Bibi's running around, this is a fact, I'm not guessing about this, because I talked to people he said it to, is running around the Middle East, his region, and his own country, and telling people point blank, just stating it, I control the United States, I control Donald Trump. He's saying that, and again, I'm not guessing at all. That's a fact. And I dare them to say that's not true, because it is true and they know it's true. So I'm an American. How do you think it makes me feel? Even if I didn't vote for Trump, which I did vote, I campaigned for Trump, but even if it was Joe Biden, I'm an American. You can't treat It's too humiliating. I can't handle that. And I shouldn't have to put up with that. This is a country of 9 million people. I'm not even attacking the country. I'm attacking my leaders who are allowing my nation of 350 million people to be forced into doing things that are bad for me and my children.
I can't tell you how much I agree with everything he said there, especially the part about being humiliated by how our government here in the United States is behaving and how our government, and this is again, regardless of which party we're talking about, because we saw how Biden handled what's happening in Gaza before allowing for Trump to inherit it and essentially continue it and make it worse. Both parties are complicit in the ongoing genocide in Gaza. And it is embarrassing to the American people. It is embarrassing to the American people when it appears that our government leadership here is more concerned about aiding and abetting a government and military that's carrying out atrocities as opposed to carrying out what's in the best interest of the American people. And on top of that, our government is willing to attempt to censor and silence Americans as they're critical of a foreign government. Someone needed to say it on the right, and I'm happy Tucker Carlson is saying it. It is humiliating. I feel humiliated by it. I was so naive, I really was. I didn't realize just how bad things had gotten and how utterly precious and vulnerable our constitutional rights really are. And when you feel like you really are losing the idealistic nature of what this country was meant to be, that you're losing any and all hope in that, it makes you want to fight for your country. It really does. You don't really know how precious your rights are when you can see them slipping away. And it's embarrassing to see how our leaders behave when it comes to supporting Israel, selling out the American people, and more importantly, okay, using our money or borrowed money to help fund the atrocities that are being carried out in Gaza and, quite honestly, the West Bank and other Middle Eastern countries as we speak, and Yemen. The final thing that I'm gonna get to, because this really struck home for me as well, and I think there are others who will relate to it. If you disagree with the points that anyone is making about Israel, if you think that the criticism toward the Israeli government and the IDF happens to be unfair, that's totally fine. We should engage in dialogue, and those opinions, that analysis should be substantively rebutted. I want to hear the arguments proving me wrong. Tucker Carlson wants to hear the arguments proving him wrong. But notice that that never happens. Something else happens though. Take a look.
And there's an ongoing humiliation ritual designed to make us all crazy, designed to turn us into haters. I'm not gonna give them the satisfaction of becoming what they call me. I'm not a hater, and I'm never gonna become one. But I will never accept this. I shouldn't have to accept it. I have nothing to be ashamed of. I have no unexpressed views. I'm not hiding anything. I say exactly what I think all the time. This is wrong, and if it's not wrong, tell me how it's not wrong. Why don't you stop attacking me and trying to get family members fired, which they never stop doing? Why don't you instead tell me how you disagree with me? But they can't, because they don't actually have an argument. There's no way to justify controlling the US government for the purposes of another country's, whatever their plan is, expansion. There's no way to justify that. And so they just scream at you and call you names. And I guess I'm just blessed because I don't believe that about myself. So that doesn't hurt me. You know, if they said, well, you've gained 10 pounds, you might hurt my feelings. But calling me a bigot doesn't hurt my feelings because I know that I'm not.
Amen. I fully agree with everything he said there. Instead of smearing people who are critical of Israel, instead of going after your fellow Americans who are critical of a foreign government, you should have a substantive rebuttal. And if you don't have a substantive rebuttal, if you take your ball and go home and then proceed to smear people as anti-Semites, if you decide to use all sorts of ridiculous, unfounded claims to attempt to destroy their lives, well, you're a coward. And you don't have an argument, and everyone sees it. Speaking the truth, drawing attention to injustice does not make you a bad person, and it is not a commentary on an entire population of people. There are people aiding and abetting what's happening in Israel right now. People like Mike Huckabee, he's not a Jewish person. He's an evangelical. And the idea that anytime you criticize people like that, you're criticizing the entire Jewish population, I find that to be anti-Semitic. Because it totally erases all the Jews all around the world and in Israel who are critical of what Netanyahu and the Israeli government are carrying out. Why don't their voices matter? And another note, all of the advice about how you shouldn't be too critical of Israel because they'll destroy your career. This career is not worth having if I can't tell the truth. I'm not interested in being a puppet for anyone. And I'm not interested in being intimidated to the point where I'm either hiding things from my audience or lying to my audience. I'm never gonna do it. Look, you guys might not agree with things I have to say, and that's totally all right. But one thing that I will tell you is I'm genuine. These are the things I actually believe. And that's the type of freedom that I think we need to fight really hard to protect. All right, we're out of time. We're gonna take a break. When we come back, Cenk Uygur will be joining us for the second hour. He's going to address some of the smears he's been dealing with, although in a completely different context. And we've got a lot of other stories to get to, so don't miss it.
Anti-Semitism.
What contributions to the progressive cause are you most proud of? I mean, I don't have super high aspirations for a singular role that I can play in the movement or anything. I try to present myself as what I think that I am, which is a progressive man who is driven by I think, well-interrogated and well-organized system of values that I try to stay consistent on, and I demonstrate that that's the sort of life that a person can lead and be successful and be happy and all of that. And that should not need to be done, but there are so many people on the right that are trying to push men in the opposite direction that I want to be able to do that. Along the way, if I can get people to care about some topics that they wouldn't necessarily care about, or that for some men they might think that's not a topic that they should be focused on, that's definitely something that I relish doing. And along the way, I mean, we've been able to introduce people to a lot of candidates. That's been a big part of what we've done. Not all of them necessarily got in office. Probably most of them did not. And a lot of them you might not even remember their names. But it was great to be able to provide people the platform where they had the chance of making a difference. Obviously AOC and all that, but there's been a lot of great people along the way.
In the bonus episode for the members, we do some inside baseball. We're gonna look at John's desk. Nice little spaceship here. Nerd, but it is kind of look cool. Who has Legos? Oh no, he's taking apart a keyboard. Who has a mouse pad that's this big? He's got a dog with a nose that you could hang something on. You know what this desk screams to me? Nerd. And that's how we like him. We love Johnny Pie. He's got his own personality like everybody does at TYT. Come meet us all in the bonus episodes. TYT.com/team.
David Sorrell, Nina Turner. Adam Green drop by.
Charlemagne.
Congressman, great to have you. It's great to be with you, Chang.
Your show is a great thing. You're informing people. A lot of the shows that I live on, my CNN, my MSNBC, and even Fox, and any of the other shows, NPR, they are so quick to decide that they know what this building means today.
The one thing that I hate that politicians do, they talk a
about the people they should be talking to.
Do they have any idea that they're the establishment and that they're hated, or do they not realize that at all?
People are so deeply in their little universe. I think it's very easy to not really question what you're doing.
Voters have a right to ask questions of any nominee, whether they're independent, Republican, or Democrat.
The system is duopoly that suppresses competition.
How is it the year 2024 and we're still like, maybe they'll talk about paid medical? Like how is that like at one level it's like, good, what we're talking about it now. You're like, it's 2024.
And that's always been the critique, that your critique of us is, well, you guys give good speeches, you put out good tweets, but you're not wielding actual power. Now we're starting to.
My favorite news platform by far. It's not even close.
It's about a country and a principle, and that's what you and I both work to achieve, and I'm so glad that at least half the battle has now been won.
If you want to go really hear what's going on honestly, you should tune into the Young Turks.
Thanks for doing such a great job. Please keep it up. Hang tough.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy.
Oh, I like making you happy.
I didn't know about that.
This is a happy experience.
Awesome.
You're welcome, YouTube.
Join the Dragon Squad by becoming a YouTube channel member. Click the join button below or sign up on tyt.com/join to get access to fun emojis, a member-only chat, exclusive shop TYT designs, ad-free watching, and so many other amazing perks. Plus, you get bragging rights for being part of the coolest community on the internet and help us drive real, positive change in the world. The Dragon Squad awaits, so join today.
Al-Qaeda.
Welcome back to TYT. Cenk Uygur will be joining us in just a few minutes. I did want to give you some updates on the story that we covered at the top of the show about the shooting that took place at the ICE detention facility in Texas. So it turns out that the update to the story, and it is good news, is that originally we believed that there were 2 ICE detainees who had been shot and killed. That number is now down to 1. So 1 detainee has died as a result of the gunman allegedly firing indiscriminately at this facility. The gunman did take his own life though, so that has happened. The other thing I wanted to also note is that it is true that ICE officials have been met with other acts of violence and threats. So according to the Washington Post, DHS recorded 79 assaults on ICE officers between January 21st and June 30th. Authorities said compared with 10 during the same period in 2024 under the Biden administration. Now, according to that review, the vast majority involve verbal threats in person or online, or physical altercations during ICE arrests of immigrants that turned violent. However, at least 3 incidents have involved shootings. All of them have been in Texas. And again, I just want to reiterate, carrying out acts of violence is counterproductive to accomplishing a damn thing when it comes to policy, whether it's immigration policy or anything else. Carrying out violence, inciting violence, we cannot support it and we should always condemn it. Being critical of the federal government is protected by our Constitution, and any effort to infringe on that should be fought back as much as possible.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, Jeff.
I'm gonna just give 2 cents on that. So first off, not only is it immoral, as you've heard me say 1,000 times, but it's so counterproductive. It's counterproductive in exactly the ways that we always outline for you guys. Number one, you're gonna shoot the wrong person. Oh, I wanna support the detainees. Then why'd you shoot one? So dumb, it's so incredibly dumb. And second of all, it'll make ICE crack down more, not less. So if you're thinking of doing violence as a way of helping the left, for God's sake, don't. Because you will not help, it's immoral, and you're not one of us if you do violence. Super obvious things. And if the other side is being hateful, is the correct answer to be hateful back, violent back? Or is the correct answer to not hate and try to find a peaceful way of getting to the right answer? I think it's peaceful, obviously. Okay, So, by the way, if Anna didn't tell you, at 5:30 we got two excellent guests for you guys today. But 5:30, Tommy Vitor from Pod Save America. He hasn't been on in a while. He was on a long time ago as part of a power panel. Back now. What do those guys think of what's happening these days? I'm super curious. Well, good news. You're all going to stay here and find out. All right, Casper, what's the next story?
Well, Cenk, I know that you had something that you wanted to address about an interview you did. I think it was back in 2015 or 2016 with David Duke. That should be the document I gave you right there.
That should be that document.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
So I'm going to stay out of it because I'm going to let you cook. Do you?
Okay, got you. I don't think that is the document. All right, here it is. Okay, I got it. All right, so there's well, not a video, so that's not a great way to start. There's something going around online claiming that I did an interview with David Duke where I shared his anti-Semitic views. So now this is a thing that's come up over and over again. This happened back in 2015, the interview did. And originally the New York Times lied about it. They had to do a correction. I'm gonna read that to you in a second. You'll be amused and fascinated by that because I think it's very telling, not just about me. But now it's making the rounds again. Partly because YouTube took down the interview, which is why I'm against cancel culture, why I'm against this kind of nonsense. Because in the interview, I aggressively challenged David Duke. That's why New York Times had to do a correction and admit that they were lying. And it was a bald-faced lie. So now the new group of folks, you're gonna be shocked to find out, pro-Israel folks, are lying about it again. And so they're like, oh yeah, Cenk brought on David Duke and he's so anti-Semitic. But since YouTube took down the video, people can't confirm one way or another. So we got the video for you guys and we're gonna show you just a couple of quick clips, clarify things. Now, give you a sense of what I'm talking about. New York Times wrote this back in 2019 when I was running for office. And this is a doozy. Mr. Uygur, a longtime supporter of Mr. Sanders, that's the only correct thing in this entire paragraph, has also disparaged former President Barack Obama on his show, argued that bestiality should be legal, and hosted white supremacist figures, including David Duke. In one clip that circulated on Twitter, Mr. Duke ends an interview by saying, I am not what you call a racist. To which Mr. Uygur replies, no, of course not. Now, if you're reading the graphic, it says sarcastically. That's what they had to add in. They had to add in sarcastically, because originally it said, and Mr. Uygur replies, no, of course not. Meaning, if I think David Duke is not racist. You're gonna see the video in a sec, okay? So we're gonna come back to that. But did you notice the first sentence too? He's attacked President Obama. You didn't clarify that it was from the left. Earlier in the article, they said that I was anti-Muslim and didn't clarify that I'm Muslim. So so like every once in a while, you'll see me defending the press from Donald Trump's attacks. And it's not because I think the press is lovely. The mainstream media has been abhorrent, terrible, but we still have freedom of the press here, even when they're terrible to you. Okay, so then the second thing was, oh, he wants to legalize bestiality. That's based on a video, maybe we'll do this on another day, where they take a portion of the video. The later portion, I go, would a horse mind being pleasured? Nay. So it's an obvious joke, right? New York Times is like, nope, he wants to legalize bestiality. So I'm a right winger who's bashing Obama, loves David Duke, and wants to legalize bestiality. And then you wonder why mainstream media is considered giant liars, okay? So now, let's show you first the part where I sarcastically agreed, oh yeah, you're not. There's a lot more than this, but let's watch this first.
By the way, I wanna make this clear too. I am not what you call a racist.
No,
I am not, because
so obviously I'm being sarcastic, but if that's not obvious to you, good news. It's gonna be obvious. They had access to the whole interview back then. This is what I said throughout the interview. Let's see if I was sharing his anti-Semitic views, if I brought him on to share his racism. Let's find out. We're going to be speaking to David Duke, former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, convicted felon for tax evasion and mail fraud. David, you misunderstand the problem entirely. That's why you've spent a life headed in the wrong direction. Even if I were to concede your point, which I most certainly do not, that the Jews are somehow running things or that they are in charge all the time of these media companies. Okay, so they did a great job. They rose up, they were successful. They should be applauded. whereas you didn't, so you're a loser. So what's the difference? They're the winners, you're the loser. Why are you guys such schmucks then? If you built everything, but somehow you don't have power anymore, you can't even get into the schools you built, why are you guys such losers? You found some Jews who did better than you, and you're bitter. You know, you get touchy when we say you were the grand wizard. You're obviously still enormously racist and bigoted. So why don't you just say it? Why do you care that people call you racist when obviously you are? When you're anti-Semitic. I mean, you don't deny you're anti-Semitic, right? I mean, after all this, for Christ's sake, you don't deny you're anti-Semitic.
I'm not anti-Semitic.
You're not anti-Semitic?
Jewish extremism.
Who in the world is anti-Semitic if you're not? You think the Jews control the world? That's anti-Semitism 101.
My arguments are very compelling to an awful lot of people. If they sit down.
They saw that interview and said, I brought him on to share anti-Semitic views.
Was this Jennifer Medina's reporting? I apologize, I said I was gonna stay out of this, but I couldn't help myself. Jennifer Medina.
That was Jennifer Medina.
Jennifer Medina watched that interview and intentionally, it was an intentional act, smeared you.
Yeah.
Why did she do that?
Because they wanted to smear Bernie by proxy. It's a classic hatchet job from mainstream media that pretends to be objective.
No one should trust her reporting.
Oh, of course not.
At all. I mean,
she's an obvious liar. It's super obvious. It's a proof is in the pudding. You just saw it. She watched that. By the way, she's not alone. You brought him on to share the anti-Semitic views. Other mainstream media figures wrote that. Because they're all liars. Jake Tapper shared the horse video, etc. They're like, yes, we get to smear outsiders. Only the elites should be listened to. We are the objective ones. You guys, let's smear them. So I annihilate David Duke. By the way, if you watch older, which you can't because all the platforms have taken it down, why don't you let people watch it? And they can make a decision on their own, right? No, we can't trust the American people. No, we have to cancel. And then later, lie, smear. So now, get a load of the pro-Israel guys saying, oh no, you see how anti-Semitic Cenk was? Did you just see that? You saw it with your own eyes, right? Bunch of gigantic liars doing it for their propaganda. One last thing, because it's fun. So in one portion of the interview, David Duke started naming Jewish bankers. I started naming non-Jewish bankers. Let's watch.
The Zionist bankers of Goldman Sachs, who stole $500 billion.
And all right, look, you think
the biggest predator bank on earth is Goldman Sachs.
No, but you know who was the head of Goldman Sachs, who then led the entire bailout of what you say is Jewish bankers?
Yeah, I know who was head of it, Blankfein and
No, Blankfein was the head of it afterwards. Hank Paulson. Hank Paulson is Christian. Why did Hank Paulson, who's Christian, decide to give all the money to the Jewish bankers, according to you? Once in a while. The CEO of Bank of America was Moynihan. Does that sound Jewish to you? Vikram Pandit, major head of Citigroup at the time of the bailouts. So I name an Irish banker, an Indian banker, and we go on, right? So, and a Mormon one. Guys, look, you see me criticizing Israel pretty significantly these days. Why? Because they merit it. But it has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. When the Grand Wizard of the KKK came with unadulterated anti-Semitism having nothing to do with Israel, I pushed back as aggressively as anybody possibly could. But nevertheless, every once in a while you'll see a smear. And by the way, people take that seriously. I've been canceled from TV appearances. They're like, oh, we read in the New York Times that you love David Duke and share his racist views. So we can't have you on, right? So it's just all propaganda to make sure that dissenting voices from the left or the right are never allowed to speak. Because if they speak, you might actually listen to them and they might be right. And the so-called objective reporters don't want you to have any other views other than theirs. That's why they cancel everyone else and go, this is the only thing you're allowed to think.
Well, we're gonna talk about the things that we think about and want to share with you. So I actually want to talk about a story, Cenk, that we didn't get to in the first hour, but I'm sure you're gonna have lots of commentary on it anyway. And it has to do with one of the things that I found that kind of bothered me about what went down at the UN General Assembly in New York. So let's get into it. Well, the Trump administration has offered a warm welcome to former Al-Qaeda combatant Ahmed al-Sharaa as he made his appearance at the United Nations General Assembly in New York. In fact, he is the first Syrian leader, and he is in fact the new Syrian leader after the toppling of Bashar al-Assad, the former dictator of Syria. He's a new leader of Syria, and as a result, he's going to speak and address the UN General Assembly, and he's the first Syrian leader to do so in 58 years. Now, it is wild to see our Secretary of State so friendly with him. Let's take a look at this tweet, which says that Marco Rubio, the junior member of Miami's terrorist mafia, it goes on and kind of talks about how it's insane that he's essentially so warm to the honorable leader of Al-Qaeda, whose army of terrorists, decapitating thugs devastated Syria on behalf of the US imperialism and genocidal Zionism. This was translated from Spanish to English, which is why it sounds or is read so weird. But as hyperbolic as that sounds, I think the point does remain that we're talking about literally a former Al-Qaeda leader, Ahmed al-Sharaa, who's now the president of Syria. And considering the fact that Al-Qaeda carried out 9/11, the largest terror attack on US soil, it just feels weird to see our government be so warm and welcoming toward him. Now, years after 9/11 happened, I don't think most Americans know this, but the Obama administration indirectly funneled weapons to Al-Qaeda in Syria. Now, I say indirectly because the weapons were supposed to go to vetted rebel groups in an effort to help topple Bashar al-Assad, something that I don't think the United States government should ever be involved in. We shouldn't be involved in regime change wars, either through proxies or through arming rebel groups, because those weapons might end up in the wrong hands. So let me give you the details. So the Obama administration took advantage of the civil unrest that was playing out in Syria to topple Bashar al-Assad. So from 2013 to 2017, the CIA ran a covert program that was referred to as Timber Sycamore. And the whole plan of this covert operation was to arm, fund, and train anti-government rebels in Syria. Separately, the Pentagon also launched its own program, and this happened in 2014, to essentially train rebels to specifically fight ISIS. But as we all know in other instances, the weapons tend to end up in the wrong hands, or at least that's what they're telling us. So from the beginning, the US was worried that these weapons would end up in the wrong hands, in the hands of Al-Qaeda terrorists, due to the chaotic nature of the civil unrest and the civil war that was playing out in Syria, which of course was also a proxy war that had other foreign nations involved. And so there were literally dozens of armed groups fighting each other, and that included Al-Qaeda, an Al-Qaeda affiliate known as Al-Nusra that was launched in Syria by al-Sharaa, and ISIS. They were gaining influence. And al-Sharaa is the one that basically launched al-Nusra in Syria after spending time in prison for his role in the Iraq war, fighting with Al-Qaeda. He was imprisoned in 2005 through 2011. And according to the New York Times, in late 2011, al-Sharaa and a few comrades sneaked into Syria to inject a new jihadist group into the accelerating civil war. Before he left Iraq, he turned to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, whom he knew from prison and who had become the leader of Al-Qaeda in Iraq. The Iraqi gave him about $50,000 to expand Al-Qaeda into Syria, al-Sharaa has said. He's the one who has said that on record. Okay, and his new group, the Nusra Front, made its presence known in early 2012 by dispatching suicide bombers to attack security personnel in Syria's largest cities, killing hundreds of people. So that is the current new leader of Syria, who received a warm welcome from our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, at the UN General Assembly. Isn't that great? In New York, by the way. The US government claims that they never directly armed Al-Qaeda in Syria, and that the vetting process the vetting process to determine which rebels they should arm turned out to be unreliable, Cenk. Turned out to be unreliable. Okay, so this guy is now engaging in like a rebranding campaign.
Yep.
I'm not allowed to curse. I don't care about his rebranding campaign. What we did, our role in what happened in Syria was wrong, because a former Al-Qaeda guy is now the leader of Syria and is like, rubbing shoulders or rubbing elbows with our federal government's leaders. I can't, how is that okay?
Yeah. So let's break down the hypocrisies here because there are plenty. We're going to get back to the topic of blowback because America does this all the time. Israel does this all the time. Oh, let's fund a bunch of terrorists. And then, but it's okay because they're fighting against my enemies. Oh, oops, now they're fighting against us. I could have never seen it coming. I see it coming. This guy one day will fight against us as well. Okay, so point number 2 is, so like Venezuelan fishermen are terrorists, peace protesters are terrorists.
Yeah.
People who are for just Palestinians existing or against a genocide are terrorists. These are different people that have been called terrorists by our government. But an actual terrorist who sent suicide bombers to kill people, not a terrorist.
Right.
So you see how Orwellian this is, how Kafkaesque this is? So we are living in 1984. So now the third part of this is, the Israelis often say, and America and Israel, there's really no difference because obviously Marco Rubio works for Israel. There's no way we allow this guy into the UN if Israel doesn't want him to be in the UN. And so Ken Klippenstein has this great thing, explanation of how the American propaganda at the UN is like word for word Israeli propaganda, right? So the Israelis are in favor of this guy and they help put him into power.
Yep.
And there's a reason for that. We'll get back to that as well. So, but they often say, oh, the pro-Israel zealots. Oh, you guys are for Muslim extremists. No. Okay, now, here's a perfect example. No, we don't care about religion. We're against all extremists. We're against Israeli extremists, Muslim extremists. We're against this guy because he's Al-Qaeda and he was fighting against us, right? We're not part of the dumb, idiot CIA who goes, oh yeah, I bet he won't fight us later. Let's fund and weaponize this terrorist because Israel wants us to, right? So, okay, we are equal opportunity against all extremists. Israel, on the other hand, not only has terrorists in its cabinet like Ben-Gvir, who was convicted of enabling terrorism, half their former prime ministers are former terrorists, etc. They're doing 66 times the terrorism of Hamas in Gaza, etc. But now they're in favor of Muslim terrorists too. As long as it has nothing to do with Jews or anything, as long as it helps Israel's agenda of territorial expansion. And that's what this is all related to.
Now, Bashar al-Assad obviously wasn't a great person, wasn't a great guy, and was a dictator. But there was one difference between Bashar al-Assad versus who's now the leader of Syria. And what was that, Cenk? What was it about Bashar al-Assad that Israel wasn't so happy about?
So they wanted, part of greater Israel is Western Syria. And Bashar al-Assad didn't want Israel to take some of Syria's land.
How dare he?
So this is unacceptable. He did not bow his head to Israel, so he must be obviously murdered or driven from power and replaced by a literal terrorist. Now, Assad's a terrible guy. So 2 things can be true at the same time. Saddam Hussein was a terrible guy, and we shouldn't have wasted several $1 trillion and many thousands of American lives fighting a guy who wasn't our particular enemy. He was also fighting against Al-Qaeda and Israel. Oh, look at that. Israel said that he was their #1 enemy, so we owe Israel. We had to go fight that war. Now, Assad was not taking orders from Israel. In fact, he was working with Russia and Iran. That's not allowed. Israel says that's not allowed. They get to determine the foreign relations of every single country. And lo and behold, as they put this guy into power and topple Assad, guess what Israel did? You'll never guess. They took land in Western Syria.
Yeah. So he has tried to rebrand himself. You'll notice in more recent public statements, he's very deferential to the government of Israel. There's no question about that. He's presenting himself as a bit of a moderate, if you will. But just a little taste of who this guy really is, especially in like recent years. So this is an older interview, but in 2013, while speaking to Al Jazeera, he said of Syria, "We do not seek to rule the country. We seek that God's law will rule the country." Remember, he's a jihadist, so something to keep in mind. His group's extremism has been pretty evident. Rights groups and Syrian activists accuse them of killing and detaining critics. And videos shared online showed them executing women they accused of prostitution. They were tough on religious minorities whose beliefs they considered heretical. They forbade Idlib's Christians from displaying crosses or ringing church bells. And they and other rebels seized Christian homes and farmland.
To be fair, that's also exactly what Israel has done with Christians in Palestine.
As we've said, we are not in favor of extremists of any kind. Now, in 2022, al-Shura's rebranding was carried out in earnest, I guess. So let me give you the details there. Al-Shura apologized to Father Jalouf and to other Christians expressing hope that they could turn the page. According to Jalouf, who is now Bishop of Aleppo, much of the Christians' property has since been returned. Quote, "This man is trustworthy," he said. "If he promises something, he carries it out." And he also earned the trust of the US government, as you could see from the photo I showed you earlier, where he was warmly embraced by our Secretary of State. And also, after Trump met with al-Shura in May, he expressed confidence in him and lifted all US sanctions against him and Syria. But I'm sure you've all seen some of the stories of sectarian violence that have continued to be carried out in Syria since the toppling of Bashar al-Assad, much of it directed at Christians, directed at Druze, and al-Shura has not been able to rein any of that in. And so going in and destabilizing countries like this on behalf of a foreign country, not even in the best interests of the United States, is a bad idea. And we're seeing that play out right now.
Yeah, and so that leads back to the blowback. So I did a story I was very proud of many years ago about, hey, where did this Muslim extremism come from in the first place? Because if you don't know this, in the 1960s and 70s, they used to go around in miniskirts in Iran, in Afghanistan, etc. All of a sudden, the place became so extreme. Well, it turns out several different folks, but primarily America and Saudi Arabia, were funding both schools and media that was pushing an extreme version of Islam. Now, why did America do that? Because they wanted the Afghans to become religious zealots to fight against the godless communists as the Soviet Union was trying to take Afghanistan. So they thought, oh, we got a great idea. Let's turn this population into frothing at the mouth extremist Muslims, because then they'll attack our enemy, Russia. Oops. And that Taliban, we literally funded the Taliban, literally. And let alone Saddam Hussein. There's a picture of Don Rumsfeld shaking hands with Saddam Hussein as he sells them weapons of mass destruction, which he then used against Iran because we told him to. So we've been working with terrorists the whole time. In fact, we've helped to create terrorists, thinking, oh, it's okay, there won't be any blowback. I bet the Taliban's great to us, right? And they never learn a lesson. We destabilized Libya. Now there's a raging civil war there, slavery's back in Libya, Iraq was a gigantic mess, and now they're playing around with potentially attacking Iran, and they've handed over Syria to a known and wanted terrorist just because he allowed Israel to take Western Syria. So it's gonna come and blow back on us, and now you know for a fact, now you see, whether it's Jewish, Christian, or Muslim, it doesn't matter. Our government doesn't mind terrorists at all. The only thing they mind is if you oppose Israel.
That's exactly right. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about all the federal employees that are now being rehired after the Trump administration realized it turns out we need these people. We'll be right back.
Al-Baghdadi.
So we're back. I'm gonna read some of these things blind. First of all, CDN, Norse Dog Dad, thank you for gifting a membership. You're awesome, we appreciate you. Okay, also, Shop TYT, you crazy? Go check out the free Palestine collection there. 100% of the profits going to the Palestine Children's Relief Fund. Is a way of showing that Americans have their hearts going out to Palestine. The American people are with Palestine, even though our American government, of course, is deeply corrupt and works for a different country. So that's shoptyt.com, obviously. Hey, Cenk, you asked, are there podcasts in the TYT network? Well, I'm glad you asked. Of course there are. So Young Turks on damage report, indisputable, Rebel HQ, etc. Make sure you're checking it out wherever you get your podcasts. Oh, this is an important one. ArabCon 2025. First of all, we've got somebody from the ADC talking about discrimination against Arabs. You want to talk about anti-Semitism? By far the biggest anti-Semitism in the country is deep racism against Arabs. One, overall, and two, most importantly, and most fervently by pro-Israel zealots who are deeply racist against Arabs. We'll talk about that later in the show. But if you're anywhere near Dearborn, Michigan, get your tickets. It's coming up on Friday and Saturday. I'm going to be there. You can get tickets at arabcon.org. And use TYT code, get 20% off. You always use TYT code wherever you are just in case. They might have a deal with us, so you'll get money off. In this case, arabcon.org. Looking forward to seeing you guys there. Okay, so now I read blind from our audience, tyt.com. Audience, Disruptor Plus says, Al-Qaeda has been a tool for Israel all along. That's why they attacked the Twin Towers, so Israel could get its war with Iraq. Now look, that's his opinion. I have no idea who did 9/11. We do know that Netanyahu afterwards said, that's it, yes! Yes, now you have to attack all of our enemies. Now you see how evil the Muslims are, and the Muslims must be destroyed. So I don't know if he was just celebrating in general, or if, but I have no evidence that he was involved. Okay, so other than the Israeli spies we caught, who later said they were there to document the event. Anyways, okay, but seriously, I really don't. We do know that they weirdly celebrated afterwards, okay? But we don't know that they were involved. Old Dirty Pastor said, anyone that even has the slightest awareness of who Cenk Uygur knows this is beyond ridiculous, okay? But that's the thing, that's why Jennifer Medina, New York Times, LA Times, CNN, all had deeply defamatory articles that weren't even close to true, because they don't care. They're like, oh yes, we get to smear Bernie. Oh, he's connected to Cenk, and Cenk is an anti-Muslim. He loves David Duke. Did you guys check? Who cares? Shut up. What do you think we're doing, reporting here? And then they pretend they're objective and that they're above us, looking down their nose at us. Oh, you outsiders, you're not even elitists, right? Can you sense I loathe them? Anyway, Boomer Dragon Cat says, I haven't seen a great thing come out of our government in years. I watched our rights disappear slowly at first, but gaining speed with Trumpy. That is totally true. Our government sucks because it is 100% corrupt. It's money in politics.
Anti-Semitism.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. News.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about the Trump administration attempting to DOGE a tricky situation because turns out that some of these federal workers that got fired early on in Trump's second term were needed. So let's get to the details. Hundreds of federal workers who lost their jobs thanks to Elon Musk and DOGE staffers earlier in Trump's administration are now being asked to return to work. Oops. So the Associated Press actually got a hold of an internal memo from the General Services Administration, GSA, which of course manages many of the offices and buildings used by federal agencies. Now, as the AP reports, starting in March, thousands of employees left the GSA as part of programs that encourage them to essentially resign or take an early retirement. Now, hundreds of others were basically dismissed as part of DOGE's, I would say, botched downsizing and cost-cutting efforts, which didn't really amount to much in the first place and caused all this dysfunction in the government agencies. But nonetheless, those employees didn't show up for work, but some continue to get paid. Now, overall, the administration slashed GSA's headquarters staff by 79%, its portfolio managers by 65%, and facilities managers by 35%, and that's according to a federal official briefed on the situation. Now, it turns out that that was, in fact, a bad idea. And now this new memo indicates that the GSA is asking about 400 employees who were laid off to please come back. Please, Jack. Don't let go, come back. Now, they've been given until the end of the week to accept or decline reinstatement. Those who accept must report for duty on October 6th after what amounts to a 7-month paid vacation. Sounds like we're spending taxpayer money well, during which time the GSA in some cases racked up high costs, passed along to taxpayers, of course, to stay in dozens of properties whose leases it had slated for termination or were allowed to expire. Now, Chad Becker, a former GSA real estate official, says that ultimately the outcome was the agency was left broken and understaffed. They didn't have the people they needed to carry out basic functions, and firing too many people wasn't all DOGE did in an attempt to dismantle GSA. A small cohort of Musk's trusted aides embedded in GSA's headquarters, sometimes sleeping on cots on the agency's 6th floor, and pursued plans to abruptly cancel nearly half of the 7,500 leases in the federal portfolio. Now, DOGE also wanted GSA to sell hundreds of federally owned buildings with the goal of generating billions in savings. GSA stated by sending more than 800 lease cancellation notices to landlords, in many cases without informing the government tenants. Geez, this is insane. The agency also published a list of hundreds of government buildings that were targeted for sale. And that was also quickly dialed back. So more than 480 leases that were supposed to be terminated by DOGE have since been spared. Plus, as a result of the internal turmoil, 131 leases expired without the government actually vacating the properties. The situation has exposed the agencies to steep fees because property owners have not been able to rent out those spaces to other tenants. So just a complete and utter disaster. Not only did DOGE fail to provide the tax savings that Americans desperately wanted by cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, it turns out that their actions led to costlier issues and problems for the federal government. Cenk.
Yeah. So we covered this when it was first happening, and what do we tell you guys? We said, wait, how do you know which guys to fire? You had no time to study this. You can go back and watch the videos of ours. So do I want cost cutting, especially if it's waste, fraud, and abuse from the government? Of course, right? So, but somehow they missed, for example, $35 billion in oil subsidies. You couldn't find that? I found it. Ro Khanna found it. He's got a bill to get rid of it. I don't know, he has a bill on everything, right? And then Trump put in $18 billion more of subsidies. So even the overinflated numbers that DOGE gave for how much they saved isn't a fraction of that. So if you actually wanted to cut waste, fraud, and abuse, why are we paying the most profitable companies in the world out of our tax dollars? It makes no sense at all. And I've got 100 examples like that. And they said they'd cut the Pentagon, the most fraudulent, wasteful department there is. Instead, they added $150 billion. But when it comes to GSA and some other departments, they're like, cut. But what are you cutting? Okay, let's get rid of that building. How do you know if we should get rid of the building? Did anybody study, hey, what do the people in that building do? Once they've realized later, oh, some of them were giving out Social Security benefits, and we have to still give out benefits, so we got to rehire them, get a new lease, get a new building, etc. Oh, we fired a bunch of people that were working at the IRS. Now they can't audit the wealthy. Oh, golly gee, I guess that was a mistake. This had never had anything to do with waste, fraud, and abuse. And it was done by a bunch of jackasses that had a different agenda and obviously butchered the whole thing. Most obvious thing in the war. And by the way, if you're a right winger and you wanted to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, they screwed you, okay? Because they didn't get rid of it at all. And instead, they made the project of getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse look silly and dumb because they did it in a dumb way.
I totally agree. Look, and also, when you think about, I'm gonna read the last graphic here. So DOGE's wall of receipts, which once boasted that the lease cancellations alone would save nearly $460 million, has since reduced that estimate to $140 million by the end of July. According to Becker, the former GSA real estate official. Trump just approved another $6 billion for Israel. $6 billion versus 140 million.
This is a joke, guys. It's the whole thing is fraudulent. You want to find waste, fraud, and abuse? This DOGE was nothing but marketing shtick so that you would forget that corporations and foreign governments own our country
and not only
own our government, right? Yeah. What did we save? 140 million. Besides which, I read the whole story through several outlets. No, you don't even save that because the idiots let a bunch of leases expire. Now we're gonna have to pay more to get new leases that cost way more.
Yep.
But they sold some buildings at a loss. Now we're gonna have to buy buildings at more expensive. They did payouts so that people would retire. Now they're bringing them back, so the payouts are gone, and we have to pay them. And for a lot of them, for the last 7 months, we've been paying them all along. So not only did we not save money, it looks like we wasted extra money on top. Oh, right, because I'm not gonna look. I don't care who's right or wrong. I don't care who has a job that is worthwhile and who has a job that's wasteful. I'm just gonna fire them all. Duh. Bunch of idiots.
Yeah.
And so now we can't go after. Now everybody's like, oh, that's it. No more going after waste, fraud, and abuse. It didn't work.
Yeah, totally squandered an opportunity. But hey, the tech bros got our personal information for their own purposes, so that's great. Anyway, we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about why Theo Von, who's one of my favorite comedians these days, is pretty upset with the Department of Homeland Security. We'll get to that story and more when we come back.
All right, guys, back. Let's do super chat. Mohammed A. Kamel writes in, keep exposing these evils. It was a great honor to talk to you, Cenk, over the weekend. I never imagined I would live to see the day when the truth would be revealed. Thank you, Mohammed. Appreciate that. Let's see how long we can go on the Young Turks here. Keep revealing truth. We are pissing off a lot of powerful people. So they're like, shut up. We had the media totally under lockdown. Now these guys are with their freaking facts. No, the media's job is to bury facts, not to say them. You crazy? Okay, so that's how they act. Oh my God, by the way, you know what? Gratuitous, nobody will pay attention. I'm doing it in random social break, etc. Maybe I'll do it on a bigger scale later, but I'll challenge any cable news anchor to a debate about Israel. Go ahead. None of them will take it because they're like, oh no, Israel, oh, I love Israel. Don't fire me. Israel should get everything. Why are they getting another $6 billion from us? Why? Why do we owe them $6 billion? So dumb. All those stupid anchors, they don't know anything about news. Just read a prompter. Oh, I hear that Israel has a moral army. They're the greatest and IDF is wonderful. And screw the Palestinians, murder them all, who cares? Okay, God damn it, man. So of course they hate us. We're telling you what's reality.
This has been disclosed to me in confidence, and so I can't name names. So you're just gonna have to trust me. But someone I know in the media industry is freaking out right now because her agent literally told her, you need to stop criticizing Israel because it's going to destroy your career prospects.
Yeah, by the way, there is like these, they're all liars. So these cable news anchors, if you talk to them behind the scenes, the reason why they don't speak out against the genocide is because they're scared to death that a pro-Israel executive is gonna fire them and that it's gonna ruin their career and they're gonna lose millions of dollars. And those are the thugs that are inside our mainstream media. They'll go look out for any criticism, anti-Semite, fire them, right? Okay, who cares about the Arabs? Just kill the Arabs. Oh, by the way, I'm worried you're an anti-Semite. No, you are the bigots. If you're still supporting Israel in the middle of a genocide, obviously you're a bigot. Obviously you're a racist. But you'll never get fired for that, never, as long as Israel's doing the genocide. Put on your pom-poms. Come on, cable news anchors, give me one of you, does any of you have the balls to go and defend Israel in an actual conversation? No, instead you'll subvert reality, you'll twist it, and you won't let on anyone who will tell you you're full of crap. Israel's not our ally. Not remotely our ally.
Got to give a shout out to Abby Phillips though, because she's had me on and I've been critical of Israel and they keep inviting me. So I got to give them
Credit
a
where
shout
credit is
out
due.
for that, yeah.
And look, Chris Cuomo drives me crazy with his pro-Israel stance, but at least he lets you on and have a conversation. Piers Morgan, and look at what happened. But the rest of them are useless. Clody, yeah, by the way, everyone on MSNBC. Look, I like Chris Hayes, but Chris, where are you? You're a progressive? You haven't called out the genocide? You're progressive?
I mean, to be fair, I don't watch Chris Hayes, so he might have.
Okay, show me.
Okay.
Maybe I'm
let's
wrong.
Go back to the comments.
Maybe I'm wrong. Rachel Maddow. So progressive. Where are you on Israel? Nothing, right? I don't want to get fired. I have a $25 million job for doing 1 hour of work a year. During the social, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna. During the social break, I'm supposed to read your comments. I read one comment and then lost it on cable news anchors bowing down to Israel. So I have to read this one. Clody3241 on Super Chat said, the current leader in Syria is Erdogan's puppet. The reason why the US and other Western nations support the new leader is because he can fill a vacuum and are betting on Turkey to control him. The reason I wanted to read that to you is because it's a good point by one of our viewers.
Yeah,
so I don't want you to get it confused that only Israel is supporting the new leader of Syria. So is Turkey.
Yes.
Okay, and Turkey is now in northern Syria. So Turkey and Israel made a deal. I'll take part of northern Syria, you take part of western Syria, and we'll put a terrorist in charge. And then we'll inform America, and then they'll be our dogs and do as we order them. I mean, they wouldn't do what Turkey orders them, but since Turkey in that case was aligned with Israel, Israel's like, oh, I got this dog. Hey, fetch, doggy. Now you're in favor of terrorism. Now you're in favor of Muslim extremists. Shut up and do it. I'm taking that goddamn land. So that's how it went down. All right.
Why don't we talk a little bit about something that has really upset Theo Von? It would upset me too. Take a look.
Heard you got deported, dude. Bye.
They simply stopped coming. They're not coming anymore. We're getting a lot of credit, but they're not coming anymore.
Turns out that comedian and podcaster Theo Von is not too happy about the fact that the Department of Homeland Security has used a clip of him in one of their snuff film social media posts, which unfortunately have been a thing under the Trump administration, essentially humiliating and making light of people who are being detained, in some cases violently so. Now, I'll get to what Theo Von has to say about the inclusion of one of his clips in one of these videos, but before we get to his response, we need to understand how his comments are being misconstrued. So in the original video, Von was asked by a fan to record a message for their friend who got deported, which that's why you kind of have to be careful with some of these videos, but nonetheless, here's the original.
Heard you got deported, dude. Bye.
Okay, so again, that was a message that he sent as a request from a fan. Now, it's unclear if the girls filming actually had a friend get deported or if they were just like joking around with Von, who has previously had the likes of Trump and JD Vance on his podcast, which I don't have a problem with him interviewing whoever the hell he wants, okay? So let's just get that out of the way. But it's pretty obvious that he was trying to be funny and wasn't trying to make a serious political point. Nonetheless, DHS took a quick snippet of that video and used it for their own purposes without talking to Von, without asking for permission, without making sure he'd be okay with it. And he's not okay with it. He posted on X, "Yo, DHS, I didn't approve to be used in this way. I know you know my address, so send a check. And please take this down and please keep me out of your banger deportation videos. Banger is in quotes, which means he's being sarcastic there. When it comes to immigration, my thoughts and heart are a lot more nuanced than this video allows. Bye. Now, Von has spoken out against the misuse of his likeness and of his content before. He spoke to Rolling Stone back in 2023 about his fear of losing ownership or control over his viral content, telling them that it's amazing and it's scary because you don't have control. I'm grateful for it, but at the same time, it's very lawless in that world. People can make whatever they want. We've created an environment where one thing that gets out there can make it so that that's all you are. And I think he's making a totally legitimate point about how your likeness can be used to make a point about you that ends up lasting for eternity. And it's unfair because it could be taken out of context. But the big question is, how does Theo Von actually feel about Trump's immigration efforts, or deportation efforts, I should say? Well, he explained in a video that he uploaded earlier this summer. Take a look.
A lot of deportations going on. It's sick when you see like children crying and people being taken from their parents. It's heartbreaking. We're just coming off a huge influx of people that were just let into the country during the last political administration. We've had Border Patrol agents on, it's undeniable. A lot of them are not even from Mexico. A lot of them are not laborers that were just coming over for fruit season or for farming season and then coming back. A lot of them are not that. So, when Trump he's heavy-handed. That's who he is, right? We've also had a broken system for a long time. So when the hammer starts to come down, or the guillotine as this is, it's not gonna be comfortable.
And he did go on to say that he believes that if you are an undocumented immigrant who it hasn't caused any problems, you're a productive member of society, there should be a way for you to gain citizenship. There should be a pathway to citizenship, or at least amnesty. So his views are nuanced, and I think most people do have nuanced views on these difficult questions. People, don't just throw their humanity away because they disagree with undocumented immigration. But I do think that drawing these distinctions is important, and obviously that was like totally ripped away from him with the DHS using his likeness in one of their videos. Cenk.
Yeah, so a couple of issues here. Number one, I actually don't think it's that complicated, and I think that the overwhelming majority of Americans agree on immigration.
I think so
too. Number one, they say close the border, kick out undocumented criminals, okay? So almost everybody agrees with that.
Well, I will say, I actually disagree. I think that many Trump voters, I don't know what the percentage is, but this is the sense I get just from my personal interactions. They're definitely to the right of that ideology or that idea. So they think if you are in the country illegally, even if you've been here for many decades and you've never engaged in any crime, just the nature of you being in the country illegally means that you should be deported. I disagree with that. So
yeah, but Anna, so I'm getting to the 70 to 80% of the country that agrees, of course. So on the right, there's folks who love mass deportations. You're right.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that number is, 20% of Republicans or the country, et cetera. And then there's some on the left who go, no, even undocumented criminals should get to stay.
Yeah, they're
right?
crazy.
I know, but that's a much lower number, super low number, right? So, but the great majority of the country says close the border, take out the undocumented criminals, send them back, right? The ones that committed serious crimes. But we're in favor of due process. We don't want you to come in with masked agents without badges and scary looking vans. A couple of women have already been raped by guys pretending to be ICE because they have no badges. There's no way of knowing, right? So we don't want that. That looks nuts, like a third world country, right? And we don't want you grabbing up grandmothers and kids from the middle of the country. So why do I say that with such confidence? Number one, the polling indicates that. Number two, forget mainstream media. There's no point in talking about them because they're just propagandists, right? So when you talk about real media, the podcasters Theo Von, Joe Rogan, us on the left, some on the right again are in that extreme right category, right? But for most of the independent podcasters and broadcasters online, we almost all agree with that. right? With what I just stated and with what the great majority of American people want. But now there's a problem because Stephen Miller and Donald Trump want to serve the most extreme end of MAGA. That's point number one. But to be fair, you could say, hey, that's their base. Like Democrats hate their base. They like their base. They're going towards their base. Okay, but then Stephen Miller has a second problem. He says, okay, we got to beat Obama's record on deportations. He deported over 2 million people in 1 year. So get out there and just kidnap a whole bunch of people. It doesn't matter. Go in the middle of the country, grab the grandmas. Who cares, right? Just go, right? And then they said 2 million. I was like, even despite all that, I'm like, they didn't grab 2 million people. Then you watch the video and it says 1.6 million self-deportations. Where's that number come from? Okay, that's just a made up number. Okay, but okay.
Yeah, how do you verify that?
Yeah, can we just make that like 1.8 or 1.9 so you'll stop grabbing people that didn't do anything wrong, that didn't break any laws, etc. So guys, let's have a real debate about the hard things in immigration. Should we have a pathway to citizenship? How long should it last? What should be the real visa system? Instead of what's the corporate robbery that goes on now. Oh, just have a bunch of illegal immigrants come in. We'll pay them lower wages. We'll get them off the books so I don't have to pay their Social Security and Medicare or whatever. All these different tricks that corporations do. But of course, you can't talk about any of that because mainstream media is corporate media. So they don't want to tell you that it's corporations that are causing this problem, not a dude who crossed the border without $1 in his pocket or the left or the right.
All right, we don't have much time left to do a full story, but I just want to note that it's now been confirmed by US officials that we're trying to do regime change in Venezuela, which I predicted, we've talked about on the show before. I don't understand how this is in our best interest at all.
It isn't. It's in the best interest of ExxonMobil, who has bribed Trump and a number of officials through campaign contributions.
It's just crazy.
And if you're a Trump supporter, and a lot of our viewers are super interesting dudes there. We got conservatives, independents, obviously folks on the left, etc. And look, guys, you said anti-war, right? What part of anti-war is let's go kill a bunch of Venezuelan fishermen / drug traffickers, but we don't really know. There's no evidence of either way. Let's just bomb them and I was gonna say figure it out later, but actually never figure it out. And then let's bring like half the US Navy right next to Venezuela and go, come on, we'll kill more of your fishermen unless you, go ahead, respond a little bit. Oh, they sent a fly that annoyed us. That's it, invade Venezuela.
So tomorrow, I do want to talk about that with a little more detail. So you can expect that. I don't want to kind of drop the story and forget about it. Also, we'll talk about the debacle involving the H-1B visas and the Trump administration's changes to that program. There's some infighting on that. So we'll give you the details on that for tomorrow's show.
I think that H-1B visa story is so interesting, okay? Because it's so nuanced. Charging for H-1B visas is actually not crazy, okay? The amount he's charging might be crazy. So there's that's a super interesting story where Trump is a little right and a lot wrong, but there's a way to do that that's better, but instead, as usual, he's bungling it,
Jen,
right?
please save it for the show.
All right.
Okay, so we'll talk about that tomorrow. But since we have a few minutes left, I think you should
go back to
do right by our viewers and read
Yes. Okay, and guys, remember a couple of things here. Abed Ayoub from the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee is going to join us and talk about the deep racism against Arabs, not just in the country at large. I'm less worried about that. I'm actually way less worried about that. I'm curious what he thinks. I think the number one problem is deep racism against Arabs by our politicians. Almost all of them are racist against Arabs, and corporate media, and almost all of them are racist against Arabs. So if you want to fight anti-Semitism, stick around right here because the real anti-Semitism is against Arab Americans, and we're going to talk about it. And then Tommy Vitor is going to join us. So stay here. We got all these amazing interviews for you guys. Tommy's obviously part of Pod Save America. Curious what that wing of the Democratic Party thinks these days. We're gonna have a very frank and interesting conversation with them, okay? Meanwhile, some of you guys wrote in on Super Chat, and Liberty and Guns We Trust wrote in and said, as a libertarian, see there you go, I told you. I used to say smartest audience, which is definitely true. A lot of times the funniest audience in the world, but also now the most diverse audience. I love the diversity of thought. In Liberty and Guns We Trust, that as a libertarian, I'm really glad how open-minded Anna and Cenk are and how they're willing to reach across the aisle. I've always been a Tucker fan too. He's one of my favorite political commentators. Others wrote in about how Tucker's very different than when he was on Fox
He
News.
is different from when he was on Fox. It turns out once you get out of that environment and think for yourself, you come to some agreeable conclusions.
Yeah, and as I've told you 100 times, the destruction of mainstream media is the best thing that's happened to this country. Now real freedom of thought is breaking out online, which they never allowed. Last thing is Stop the Stupidity said, never fight violence/hate with more hate or violence. Exactly right, I love our audience. Stay right here, we got the interviews coming up. Back on TYT, we got a fun interview, well, an interesting interview for you guys right now. Abed Ayoub is the National Executive Director of the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee. And they're hosting ArabCon, by the way, in Dearborn, Michigan, starting tomorrow. I'll be there, arabcon.org, not a big deal. I don't know why I say not a big deal. It's going to be an interesting conversation. Actually, we got a panel with Ro Khanna about the reshaping of American politics. Anyways, I'll get back into that later. First, Abed, welcome. How you doing?
Good, thank you. I appreciate you having me on, and we can make it a little fun. It'll definitely be interesting. So
yeah, for sure. Okay, in a little bit, we're going to talk about how deeply racist corporate media, that's almost all the mainstream media, and almost all of our politicians are against Arabs. We'll get to that in a second. But first, not a lot of people have heard of the ADC. I mean, everybody's heard of the ADL, right? But part of the reason you guys don't get a lot of press is because the press is racist against you. But anyway, so tell us what the ADC is.
ADC is the country's largest Arab American grassroots civil rights organization. We're 45 years old. We were founded by former U.S. Senator James Abarizik. And if you've ever watched the film American Hustle, that's what led to the creation of ADC. When the FBI went in acting as Arab oil sheiks and trying to buy off politicians, and they approached Senator Abarizik, and he realized right away something was wrong because these Sikhs said they were from, these Czechs said they were from Lebanon, and we don't have any oil in Lebanon. So something was wrong with their plans, and that led to the creation of ADC ultimately. And since then, we've been involved in a number of issues, policy on the state level, federal level, and on the local level, working with Hollywood, working against, pushing the media against the narratives against us. So we're there. We've been around again, 45 years, members in every state, chapters across the country. You've definitely heard of the ADL, and we hope that you continue hearing about ADC in the years to come.
I actually think you should be the busiest man in America. So we're going to get to that. But part of you being busy is not just ArabCon, not just fighting yes all that racism, but you guys got a new idea. You're trying to kick Israel out of the European League and FIFA. You got a billboard. Let's show the billboard. This is what, in Times Square? Wow. Israel's committing genocide. Soccer federations boycott Israel. So Abed, tell us about that.
So this is a great campaign that we came up with a number of our partners in Europe. And the goal is to isolate Israel. I mean, the goal is to isolate the Zionist regime. And we saw, this is not an original playbook. We saw this in South Africa with the World Cup. We saw this happen numerous times prior. We have to isolate them on the world stage. They shouldn't be allowed to participate in UEFA, in the European League, and they shouldn't be allowed to participate in the World Cup. And we decided to launch that campaign. It's very timely after the official ruling from the UN about genocide. This is the first step that these nations can take. So we put up the billboard. There's a number of actions happening across Europe. People have been seeing the videos and the tweets and the reels. So it's gaining momentum. We're hoping that an official decision from UEFA is made sometime soon, and then that leads to others as well taking the same action against Israel.
Yeah, for those who don't know, banning South Africa from the rugby leagues internationally made a huge difference in getting rid of apartheid. People love sports, something that folks are obsessed by. The two things that make a difference usually in these kind of situations are business boycotts. That's why the pro-Israel forces get the most angry about business boycotts and say you're not allowed to, if you're in America, you're not allowed to have that opinion. You're not allowed to take that action. Don't you know you work for Israel? There's First Amendment has an asterisk, okay? And now on soccer, I'm sure they're going to be very upset about that. So Abed, since you're saying
they were very upset.
That's what I was going to ask you. Since you're doing something that is nonviolent and peaceful and logical, it's what was done to defeat apartheid. I'm sure that you've been a target of tremendous attacks. So tell us about that.
There has been. I mean, the Israeli government got involved directly with the owner of the building and the billboard, demanded it be taken down. Unfortunately, the guy that owns the building, complied and forced it down, but it was up there for a few days. People got the message, and we anticipate that there's going to be targeting. There's going to be folks looking, extra carefully at what we're doing and who we are. But again, that's happened, and it ties into the theme of ArabCon that we've been here before. This organization has been targeted. Our offices were bombed in 1985. Our staff members were killed by the Jewish Defense League. So we've gone through this, and we anticipate the targeting will continue.
Yeah. So, we just say it casually, like you had a perfectly normal, benign boycott of a soccer league because of the massive discrimination in occupied territories and a genocide that's going on. And they're like, shut up. You're not allowed to say that in America. Don't you know First Amendment has an Israel asterisk? They're just unreal. So, all right, now let's talk about the racism. Now, Abed, when you have anything that is slightly critical of Israel, you know what the pro-Israel extremists in this country do. Anti-Semite, 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 fire them, cancel them, arrest them, etc. Right? We have congressional hearings if their feelings have been hurt. Meanwhile, Arabs are getting slaughtered in Gaza, over 65,000 dead at a bare minimum. The number of casualties is over 200,000 when you include the wounded, over 20,000 kids killed. And it appears that our politicians and our media goes, so what? So what? They're just Arabs. So isn't the racism against Arabs 10,000 times more than the so-called anti-Semitism against their beloved Israel?
Absolutely. I mean, the racism, the discrimination that we've been facing for decades in this country, it's real. And it does start from the media, like you're saying. It starts from the narrative they want to push and the positions they want to push. But we're starting to see that break a little bit. And I think the one thing that you've done, tremendously well is to show that there is a realignment. There are things changing. And many folks from the right and from the conservative side are starting to realize also, wait a minute, these attacks are not, they're not real. There's nothing there. We were made to hate these communities. We were forced to hate Arabs, forced to hate Muslims. We shouldn't have. I tell a funny story. After Mahmoud Khalil was arrested, I got a call from the office of from a guy in Texas named Skip, very older white guy, heavy, Texas accent. He goes, I hate you people and I don't like you people, but you have every right to say what you want. And he's like, son, you know why we have the Second Amendment? And I'm like, no, why? And he's like, well, to protect the First. And I'll be at your office tomorrow morning if you need me, right? So it's that type of mindset and mentality that we're starting to see from, all Americans waking up and realizing, you know what? Arabs, Muslims, they want the same thing in this country. They're not as bad as the media is making them out to be. Now that in turn is opening their eyes to what's happening in Gaza, opening their eyes to what's happening in the genocide, and most importantly, opening their eyes to the role the U.S. government, their government has played for the past decades in foreign policy in the Middle East. So it's a domino effect that's really accelerating the change we're seeing. And on domestic issues, on foreign policy issues, we are seeing more and more people realize most of this country has been played in believing that we're the bad guy and believing that, Muslims and Arabs need to be pointed, they need to be isolated, they need to be pointed at and feared, which, that's falling. That narrative is falling quickly. Yeah. And the media can't keep up with it. They're trying their best to prop it up. They can't keep up with it.
So I was just at a CARE event, that's Council on American Islamic Relations. So that's a Muslim American civil rights group. I'm going to ArabCon on Friday and Saturday, this Friday and Saturday. And that's an Arab group. Now, a lot of Americans, partly because of propaganda by mainstream media, pro-Israel propaganda, don't even know that there are, why are there two separate groups? Because Arabs are not just Muslims. Arabs are, first of all, a wide variety of religions, but the two major religions these days are Muslims and Christians. So how do you deal with that? Do you get a sense that people know that well enough? Do you get a sense, because what's weird is if Christians are attacked anywhere else of any other race, that's a big deal in America. The press will go, oh my God, these people killed Christians and it's horrific, etc. But are Christians being killed, Arab Christians being killed by Israel in Gaza and other places? And to what degree are there Arab Christians?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Arab Christians are being killed. They are being persecuted, and they have been persecuted in Gaza and throughout Palestine since 1948. And it's horrible to see, and it's very unfortunate. The understanding, the level of understanding that the American public has in our community is minimal. Like they don't, a lot of them really don't understand the difference between Arab and Muslim, and that there are Arab Christians. But as I said, a few minutes ago, that's starting to change. They are starting to realize that, and you are now seeing, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene meeting with Arab Christians, and then for the first time understanding, wow, there are Christians in Gaza that are impacted from the genocide. So that narrative is shifting quickly, We have to do our part. And in this country, Arab Christians make up a majority of the Arab community. The Arab community here is not a majority Muslim; it is majority Christian. And people got to realize that and understand that. And at the same time, whether it's CARE or ADC or any of the others, we work closely together. The religion really doesn't matter. We have the same guiding sets of principles that push our work and push us to the same objective at the end. So our organization, at least, it's made up of Muslim, Christian, Jewish people. So it's really based on a single principle of humanity and justice.
Yeah. And if you don't know, Jews had way more problems in Europe than they ever had in the Middle East. It's not to say that anything was perfect, but before 1948, there were tons of Arab Jews along with Arab Christians and Arab Muslims, and they coexisted in relative peace, certainly compared to Europe. As I was talking to at CARE, I think that I'm seeing the same thing with Arab Americans here. But I think that Arab Americans are probably, along with Muslim Americans, the most in favor of American sovereignty. That you don't want a foreign government influencing our government. And no one is more incentivized to make sure that a foreign government does not mess with the American government than Arab Americans. Is it fair to say that Arab Americans are at the very top of the list of people who care about American sovereignty?
I mean, absolutely. In a way, it's a very true statement. We want American sovereignty. We don't want any foreign government meddling in our affairs, and we believe that America shouldn't be meddling in anybody else's affairs overseas. And that kind of sounds like America First, platform. It's there, and that's the way the community thinks. That's the way our community thinks. That's the way a number of voters think. Now, when it comes to what the parties are putting out there or how they're going in elections and the platforms, that's a different story. But we can sit down and say with a straight face that, yeah, we don't want the US involved in any foreign wars or any foreign meddling. And at the same time, we don't want any foreign country meddling in our affairs here in this country. Because a lot of that has happened to our home countries, to our countries, where my father came from, Syria, or my mom came from, Lebanon. Like, that's been happening for generations. We don't want to see that here. That doesn't belong in the US, and there's no room for it. And we would, again, rather see this country focus on investing here at home, doing what we can for our communities here, and not, propping up a genocidal regime or propping up these wars overseas.
Yeah, so I'm trying to decide who's more racist: corporate media, mainstream media, cable news, New York Times, Washington Post, etc., or politicians. So let's start with the media, and then we'll have this fun contest to see which one is more racist, okay? So the media says 36 Jewish kids killed in Israel on October 7th is the worst thing you could imagine. I agree. There's nothing wrong with that statement. Those poor kids, right? But 20,000 dead Palestinian Arab kids, who cares? I mean, we just gave another $6 billion gift for more genocide in Israel. Didn't make cable news at all, at all. There's 20,000 dead kids, 65,000 dead people, and it seems like cable news is saying to America, yeah, but they're Arab lives, so they're totally irrelevant. Whereas if you affected the feelings, forget the lives, the feelings of people who support Israel, there'll be congressional hearings, and we'll cover it 24/7, because those are people whose lives matter and feelings matter. But you, Abed, and all you Arab Americans, it appears that all of cable news and all of mainstream media is telling you, yeah, we're racist. We don't think that your kids matter at all.
Absolutely, that's exactly how it is. They're racist. They're pushing their own agenda, their own narrative. They're pushing these talking points that are, again, I think there's a lot of pushback against them. I don't think they're going to be able to do this and be taken seriously much longer. A lot of independent media sources, a lot of folks now on social media, a lot of people from Gaza telling their own story, their own narrative. That's changed the ballgame a little bit, and people now are seeing through their hypocrisy. Your eyes are not lying to you when you see children that have been killed, that have been mutilated, have been blown to pieces. That's not a fake image. They can push the narrative that it's fake. They can try to do what they want, but so many people are seeing it in real time that they just look racist. Like you're saying, they look racist. They look like they don't value Arab lives, and they're pushing for a genocide. And they're rewarding writers that push for genocide, right? Like Barry Weiss and others. They're in this little world of theirs, and what they're not realizing, at least I think that not many people take them seriously anymore. Donald Trump is kind of right when he calls it like the failing New York Times, or when he calls it like when he goes after these establishment papers and these legacy outlets, about how they're failing and if they've lost readership and viewership. He kind of has a point, and I think a lot of it has to do with their hypocrisy on this.
Yeah. So let's take one more example, then we'll turn to the politicians. So they say there's a charter somewhere that hypothetically says that Israel should not exist. And now Israel does exist. It's a nuclear armed country. It has Iron Dome, the only country in the world that has a system that protects it from other missiles. We don't have it, but we gave it to them. So they have the defense, they have the nukes, they have a military that is bigger and better than the rest of the Middle East combined, right? In a sense, they're almost the safest country in the world. You almost have to do a stand down order in order to get attacked. I wonder what happened there. Anyways, okay, so they're super safe. They already exist. There's no threat to their existence at all. But the media is obsessed with Israel has a right to exist. Like it'd be like if they came on air, they're like, Norway has a right to exist. Of course, yeah, Norway has a right to exist and it exists. Why are we even talking about this? There's 2 people over there who think that Norway shouldn't exist. This is the biggest issue. But let me ask you something, Abed. Does Palestine exist? And do you see the same kind of emotion and anger and coverage about the fact that Palestine actually doesn't exist? Or is all of corporate media, all of mainstream media so racist that they think a 1% of a 1% chance that Israel might not exist a couple hundred years from now is so much more important because they're Israelis, they matter. Whereas you guys don't actually exist, and Israel's crushing you, occupying the Palestinians for 58 years, and now committing a genocide and starving them to death. But who cares? We're never going to talk about the fact that Palestine doesn't exist.
Exactly. I mean, they look first. Don't say that Israel has nukes. That's anti-Semitic, right? You can't say that's something that you can't say on air. You might get fined for it. But this hypocritical view. You're absolutely right, and it's not only Palestine. It's at one point, I think a month or 2 ago, Israel bombed 3 capital Arab cities. They bombed Damascus, they bombed Sana'a, Yemen, they bombed Beirut, all within the same day. How is that allowed to happen? How are we just turning a blind eye to this country who committed a genocide? I mean, step back and look. They committed a genocide. Hundreds of thousands of people killed, displaced. They made it complete ruins. Israel expanded its territory. They take over parts of Syria. They take over parts of Lebanon. They're causing chaos everywhere. It's as if they were rewarded. And it's not just that the mainstream media and these outlets are turning a blind eye to genocide. They're allowing it to continue and grow and rewarding this country by not even looking at these issues. And the fact that they're bombing these cities, bombing all these countries, it's as if nothing normal. The way they bombed Doha the other, a couple of weeks ago, perfect example as well.
Yeah. So look, we've now established that every reporter at the New York Times and every so-called reporter, do they have any reporters? Anchors at CNN, pundits, etc. They're all 100% and indisputably racist because they make it appear that Israel's right to exist is a bigger issue than Palestine's right to exist when Palestine doesn't actually exist. And Israel is one of the safest countries in the world. So the fact that they are perverting reality, they're the exact opposite of objective. And why do they do it? Because they hate Arabs. And they think, who cares if Arabs don't exist? They're not real people. Who cares if their children are murdered? They're not that important. They're not Israeli children. So there's no question, mainstream media is nearly 100% racist. So now we turn to the politicians because this is a tough contest. I don't know if they're both going to wind up at 100%. So they had congressional hearings about anti-Semitism. Okay, that's great news for you guys because Arabs are Semites. And my God, is there racism against Arabs? First of all, they should have brought in the publisher at the New York Times and the head of CNN and MSNBC, et cetera, to those congressional hearings. But okay, let's put that aside. I mean, people are yelling at Arabs all the time, calling them terrorists, this, that, and the other thing. College campus, oh my God, I bet an Arab's never had any problems on a college campus. So did Stefanik and the Republicans, but all of Congress, did they invite you guys as part of their anti-Semitism hearings?
Absolutely not. Huh. Absolutely not. And right, it makes you wonder. I mean, it's mind-boggling. And look, by the way, we're the organization that filed complaints on behalf of Jewish students at a University of New York who were facing real anti-Semitism. Right, ADC has defended Jewish students facing anti-Semitism, so we don't shy away from it. When we see it, we're going to call it out. We're going to work with the students, and we're going to work those that are impacted by it. And by real anti-Semitism, you have these students that were standing up for Palestine and targeted by the ADL and others because they're not Jewish enough or they're not, Zionist enough. That's what we're starting to see that backfire. But no way these lawmakers are reaching out to us. They won't reach out to us, and they don't want to know the truth. They're buying the ADL talking points. They're buying the ADL language. Look at the bills coming out of California, SB 715 and SB 771 that fines social media companies if their algorithm pushes out hate. It's a workaround to Section 230, and all of this is based on silencing criticism, silencing any talk about Israel and the genocide. And labeling it anti-Semitism. I mean, this is the route they're going, and it's infringing on our rights as Americans. It's taken away your First Amendment right to say, to critique a country, to critique a foreign government, all because they want to prop up, Netanyahu in Israel and this Zionist regime.
Yeah. So Jewish students and Arab students who are fighting for peace, who are viciously slandered, attacked, etc., by pro-Israel zealots, not invited to hearings about anti-Semitism, even though they're all Semites, the Jews and the Arabs are.
Yeah.
The only people invited are the pro-Israel guys. And they also smear the other Jewish students for peace, right?
Yeah, right. But I mean, their feelings are the only ones that matter, right? We got to make sure that, these pro-Israel zealots are safe on campus and their feelings aren't hurt. God forbid if their feelings are hurt, we got to dismantle student groups. We got to dismantle activism. We got to silence everybody and send in the National Guard because a little kid at Columbia's feelings got hurt. I mean, that's just the way it's playing out.
So far in the middle of this genocide, we've sent Israel at a minimum of $24 billion as a thank you note. Hey, way to kill all those Arab kids. Attaboy, murder more Arabs, says our Congress. And they just did it again. Trump just said, all of our politicians, Trump just sent them $6 billion more. Like, keep slaughtering. They're Arabs, their lives don't matter at all, right? Now, do you think that it's because Trump, Biden, and 90% of Congress take money from the Israeli lobby? So they're not actually racist, they're just deeply corrupt, and they'll work for anyone, including a foreign government, if they're paid, and they're basically prostitutes. Or they hate Arabs so much because they're so naturally deeply racist against Arabs that they think, yeah, let's pay Israel to slaughter more Arabs. Which one do you think it is?
Yeah, that's a good question. Look, to be real, that's a good question. Now, I've had the opportunity to sit with some of the Republican lawmakers, right, like Congressman Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and even Matt Gaetz, who's out of Congress now. But genuinely, when they start learning about the issue, when they start understanding, you could see their positions change. You could see their eyes open up. But then I asked myself, I mean, you were elected to Congress. There's no way you didn't know this information. There's no way this wasn't available. Like, everything is out there now. It's easy to learn. It's easy to catch up on it. I do believe a good sizable percentage of Congress do hate us. They do hate Arabs. They do hate Muslims on both the left and right. I don't think it's a Republican or a Democrat thing. I think you're going to find a lot of bipartisanship on this one issue of hating us. And those folks, I mean, it needs a miracle. They need to be voted out. But I do think you have a good amount of individuals that can be swayed and that can be shown who we are and can start taking positions against genocide. And we're reaching that point where whether they're doing it because it's an America First agenda or because they, for whatever reason, as long as we're getting to the same ends, I think there is that opportunity there to change that narrative. And if you look at how close Congress is in the House and the votes, if we can get 10 to 15 Republicans to change their mind, and if we can get a complete overhaul of the Democratic Party, top to bottom, we should be in good shape.
That's a lot of ifs, brother. Okay, I mean, I wish you luck.
I know, exactly. It's a lot, and it's a lot, but that's why we have to focus on, again, state level, local level activism in this way.
And you're right, Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene have been great on this issue, so it's not a Republican or Democrat thing. Joe Biden was a disaster. He gave 3 times as much as Trump has. Trump is giving a bigger green light to massacres, but Biden gave more money to massacres and genocide. So both parties are atrocious on this. And I can go on and on about how Congress is deeply racist against Arabs and bigoted against Muslims. That's obviously, but by the way, there's also good Democrats on this. Bernie Sanders and Jamie Raskin and others who are, Ro Khanna has been great on it, now pushing back against funding Israel. All right, but one last thing here. So ArabCon is happening over the next couple of days. So arabcon.org is the website. What is ArabCon?
It's an opportunity for our community to come together to, talk about our issues, to celebrate the culture, the heritage at the same time, and to organize and mobilize. We haven't had a space where we meet outside of Washington, D.C., where collectively as a community where we can hear from folks like yourself and others. It's open to everybody, not just Arabs, and an opportunity to build on our commonalities, to build on our strategy, and for us to prepare for the midterms coming up in 2026. So we are trying to get ahead of that. And again, if folks are in Michigan, if folks are coming out here, we'd love to see you out here and register for the for the weekend.
So we're not, there's no, TYT is not getting paid at all or anything like that, but I'm gonna give a promo code of TYT for anybody watching this. Like, thank you for watching the interview and caring about these things. You'll get 20% off if you use the code TYT to go to,
TYT
20. What's that?
TYT 20.
Oh, sorry, TYT 20. See, I gotta get that right. Anyways, at arabcon.org. But again, we're not getting paid for it. It's just to get the other point of view out there. Last thing is, who else is going?
Oh my God, we got Mahmoud Khalil, Mustafa Bataha, Ro Khanna. We got a lot of Professor Khalid Beydoun. We got Amy Greer. The list.
Mehdi coming or no?
Mehdi Hassan is coming. Sorry, yeah, I blanked out. Mehdi Hassan's coming. Bassem Youssef's coming. Thank you for that. It's been a long week. Yes, Mehdi's coming. Bassem's coming. We're doing a good showing of Watermelon Pictures. We have a representative from the Kingdom of Spain coming. We're recognizing Spain tomorrow evening for their efforts, what they've been doing. So it's going to be a great program, all around from Thursday through Sunday.
Yeah, and look, like I said, I was just at the Caravan, and Mahmoud Khalil got an award there, spoke there, but he's not the only one who was taken as a political prisoner. Other political prisoners also spoke out at that event, and it was really powerful. Stories you have not heard. It's so frightening that there are political prisoners inside America now. And of course, they're not even taken on our behalf. They're taken on behalf of another country. It's insanity, total insanity. All right, Abed Ayoub, head of the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee. Thank you for joining us, brother. We appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Yep. All right, stay right here because we have another great interview for you guys. Tommy Vitor from Pod Save America. Let's have a frank conversation about the state of the American politics and media. That ought to be a doozy. We'll be right back. All right, back on TYT. Great interview for you guys now. Tommy Vitor, he's founded a lot of things. So let's go through it all, and then we're kind of, in the old days, we used to be two different wings of the Democratic Party, but I don't know that we are anymore, so we'll have that discussion. But he's co-founder of Crooked Media, co-host of Pod Save America, host of Pod Save the World. He's saving a lot of things. His first book was Democracy or Else. Check that out. I want to talk about that. He worked for President Obama for 9 years, and including a stint at White House National Security spokesman, which is kind of badass. All right, Tommy, welcome back, brother.
Hey, it's great to see you.
Good to see you. All right, so I want to talk about the state of Democratic Party, state of media.
It's perfect.
Yeah, it's good. We're covered. All right, that's a wrap. You know, your title of your book is Democracy or Else. Mm-hmm. So around, I guess, about a year before the debate, roughly speaking, at the Young Turks we were saying, and we did a petition, and we did many other things from that. We think Biden's too old. We think that Biden's in the mid-30s in approval rating, and we're gonna lose to Trump, so we have to get a new candidate. We were blasted with derision, and said that we support Trump and we're gonna ruin democracy, etc. We were saying, no, we wanna beat Trump. We wanna beat him. And running a guy who's super unpopular is maniacal, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, has anyone learned any lessons from that, right? Like, because I feel like, yeah, they pretended to learn lessons, right? The Democratic leadership I'm talking about. But then the next time we'll have a primary, my guess is they'll go back to, bow your head. We anointed a leader. It's going to be a corporate Democrat as always. And if you don't support him, you support Trump and the Republicans. So that's my take on it. I'm curious what your take on it is.
My take on it is a few things. First of all, you guys are right. Anyone who criticized you for stating what frankly was obvious is the wrong word, because I wasn't leaning into it the way you guys were, and I wish I had been. But you guys were right to push for a primary after the one term of Biden. I think all of us expected that that's what he would do, right? I mean, he talked about being a bridge to the next generation, and then he went back on that promise, and it was incredibly frustrating. I think everyone just sort of felt stuck. I hope people are learning their lessons. For me, it's a bit of a litmus test. Like, if you're a serious person, I think you should be able to admit that it was a huge mistake for Joe Biden to run for re-election, and that suppressing debate and arguments and conversations like the one you guys were trying to have is not helpful for anyone. Like, I actually think that good, like big, messy primary processes are a good thing, because we vet things out while there's still time to win the general election. But or have we learned our lesson yet? I don't know. It's not clear to me, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I hope that we're all allies in actually pushing for democracy, not just in a general election, but in a primary. Where you've got to pick the best candidate, the strongest candidate. So let's hope we do it right the next time around. So now let's talk about whether you think the Democratic Party has a sense that they should go populist, and this is super critical, and whether they have a sense that they should mean it, or like, I don't want it to just be like a charade. Oh yeah, now we're playing dress up populist. So what's your sense of that?
Well, what do you mean by mean it? I mean, I think they should focus on a big economic agenda that speaks to the cost of living, housing, the price of education, wages, the price of healthcare. I think those are the core things that people vote on every day, or care about when they go to the polls. I think that Democrats, sometimes we get caught up in talking about bigger picture, more high-minded things, like, democracy was sort of the focus at the end of the last election. I thought that was a mistake at the time. I think that's been kind of borne out. I think we're seeing a bunch of impressive populist candidates running right now, like Graham Plattner in Maine, for example. I'm really excited about those candidacies. I think Zohar Mamdani has shown that can be a winning path. And I think that, success begets success, right? And if those candidates win, and they win big, and that those political paths are seen as successful, you will see more Democrats following suit. I think the challenge we've had is Republicans have successfully demagogued some issues that right-wing populists have had a lot of success demagoguing, like immigration. And I think that during the Biden administration, they had a point that the border had gotten out of control. And so I think we did need to speak to some of those concerns because they really had risen in salience among voters, and we had to just address those concerns, you know?
Yeah, so let me give you some details and examples of what I mean by mean it. So I think Joe Biden's a liar. So I know I'm harsh, right? But we're having a conversation. You tell me in your language how you feel about it. So he said that he was in favor of minimum wage, higher wages, right? Because minimum wage is not just about minimum wage, it pushes up other wages, right? And that was the first thing he took out of the COVID relief bill. So didn't mean it at all. And then when Bernie did an amendment, he had the 2 Delaware senators vote against it. That's a clear sign that Biden was against the minimum wage increase. He said he was going to do public option, never even introduced it. They put paid family leave as a throwaway in one of the bills. They didn't get it. They never fought for it, even though it's at 84% approval rating. So I don't think Joe Biden's lying for no reason. I don't think Democratic leadership is lying for no reason. I think they're lying because they're corrupt. I think that they take money from corporate donors and they pretend to be in favor of popular policies and they never actually do them. So what am I missing?
I think that's true for some politicians. Like, I honestly, I do think I have a lot of things I'm really mad at Joe Biden about. I think he was horrendous on Gaza. I think he shouldn't have run for re-election. I think he was dishonest about that, and it's incredibly frustrating to me. I actually do think he wanted to raise the minimum wage. I forget all the details of that vote in question, and it was really frustrating at the time that they gave up that fight so quickly. But I'm with you. I also was frustrated that they didn't put forward some sort of healthcare plan that included a public option. I also, though, Cenk, when I think back to that 2020 primary and the debates, what I'm struck by when I think about those fights is how divorced they were from the political reality at the time. Like, remember, there was a big fight, not just about who was going to do Medicare for all, but who was going to implement it the fastest, right? That was kind of like that final battle between Bernie and Elizabeth Warren. And I think a lot of people who were like counting votes at the time knew that on no planet was that going to actually happen, right? So it's like, I'm fine for everyone fighting and talking about big, impactful ideas like that, but then we have to do the hard work of getting the representatives in place to actually get it done. You know what I mean? And I think that's where we've really failed.
No, see, but Tommy, look, on the one hand, I understand what you're saying about the math and all of that, right? So, and I don't want to get back into the minimum wage debate, but there's no question Biden took it out. He did not mean it at all. That's my opinion.
I believe you. I truly don't remember, to be honest.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. But I want to move on to the healthcare that you mentioned, right? So, see, that's another great example. So there's a couple of issues with healthcare. You're right, didn't have the votes for Medicare for all, even though it began with 70% popularity before almost all of the Republicans attacked it, and at least half of the Democrats attacked it, and all of cable news attacked it. So it went all the way down at one point to 55%, but still like easily more popular, right? But something that's even easier than that is negotiating drug prices. So it's mental not to negotiate drug prices. It's unheard of. Like, it's crazy. Literally no other country does it. It's the most anti-capitalist thing there is in the world. It's like communism for corporations, which makes no sense. So it's ludicrous. Yep. But we have no chance of doing that either. I mean, see, there's 2 parts of it. One is Biden said, "Oh, I'm going to do 1 drug," and then over a course of like a long time, 10 drugs. My opinion on that is, yeah, that's a cover story, so you get distracted from the fact that they are not doing it for tens of thousands of drugs, right? So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is the reason why they can't fix that provision is not just that the Republicans are 100% corrupt, which they are on that issue, but tons of Democrats. The majority of Democrats are also corrupt. They take money from big pharma. So that's why when President Obama went to go, do Affordable Care Act, he's like, well, I can't do the public option and I can't negotiate drug prices because big pharma owns this town. But nobody ever explains, what does it mean that big pharma is too strong? It means they've bought enough corrupt Democrats and they bought the entire Republican Party, so we can't pass anything. So are we ever going to acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is how deeply corrupt most of our politicians are?
You're right. Like, money in politics is the original sin. I think it is like the root of maybe not all evil, but most evils in our political system. It has blocked common sense things from happening, from negotiating over drug prices to banning machine guns from the streets of our cities. And I do think that we need to talk more about fixing that problem. I think Democrats really need a clear, concise reform agenda. I'm now old enough to remember the 2006 midterms when Democrats, I think, pretty successfully ran on that kind of reform agenda, and cleaning up Washington and dealing with lobbyists and PAC money and all these scandals, the Jack Abramoff scandals that had happened at the time. I think that message gets greatly complicated when you have all this shit in the news about Hunter Biden, or when there's a lot of attention on members of Congress, including a lot of Democrats, trading stocks, right? Like, I think the fact that members of Congress can still buy and sell individual stocks and do so based on privileged information is insane. And I think Pelosi and a lot of other Democrats have a huge blind spot on this, and we have to fix it. So I'm with you, but it's like we have to practice what we preach and then put forward a big reform agenda that will actually address the problem.
Tommy, I'm worried that if we win in 2028, and we go back to the same old tricks, and we don't do anything about money in politics or do window dressing. Oh, I banned a tiny little thing, right? But everybody's still getting bribed, right? Or we don't do minimum wage, we don't do anything on healthcare. That the country's going to despise us. Like, do people get that? I don't think that like, my sense of it is they get, oh, we should pretend to be populist. Oh, we should, pretend to be X, Y, or Z. But I don't know that it's sunk into Democratic, not just leadership like Schumer and Jeffries, but like the upper level of the Democratic Party. No, if you do what you did with Biden, and remember, because Tommy, I was saying Biden didn't do enough. Biden was, this is not anywhere near enough. And I was getting back, no, he's FDR 2.0. We nailed it. So, like, if that mentality hasn't changed, they're gonna destroy this party.
Listen, man, the FDR 2.0 stuff was like kind of eye-rolling, ridiculous spin from staffers to a president who for some reason needed to read that in the press. It was sort of embarrassing at the time. I think we all agree that that was silly. I think you have a point, which is that when you have a political system and a process that just doesn't deliver for people over and over and over again, it can only bend so far until it breaks. And I don't know what breaking looks like in this context, but it doesn't sound very good to me. So I'm with you. I think we have we have a huge gerontocracy problem in the Democratic Party that is still a challenge. It didn't go away with Joe Biden, and we have to fix it. And I think there is a frustration among a lot of rank and file Democrats that leadership is not necessarily meeting the moment, right? They tell us a lot about kind of creeping authoritarianism and Trump's a dictator and this and that. But it's like, so what are we doing about it? Well, Jeffries and Schumer are demanding a meeting. It doesn't feel like quite enough.
Yeah. I'm sure it'll be followed up with a strongly worded letter. Okay.
Yes, always.
And a lot of those going out, including to Israel. And by my God, has that changed their policy? All right, so which then I'm going to come back to the media in a sec, but let's go to President Obama. So you worked for President Obama for a long time. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say something that others are going to find controversial, but I thought he was weak sauce. I thought he didn't try very hard, that he had an opportunity for massive change after the 2008 collapse. People voted for change. He had an 83% approval rating after inauguration, which is unheard of. And then he did a Heritage Foundation plan on the Affordable Care Act and then took 7 years off. Okay, so
7 years off. Come on, man. What are we talking about here?
What did he pass
the
after?
Iran nuclear agreement was an achievement.
Oh, no,
the
that's
Cuban
a good one.
normalization was an achievement. We're taking 7 years off.
No, you're right. The Iran agreement was great, and we give him a lot of credit for that. So Iran agreement, Affordable Care Act, Lilly Ledbetter,
saving the auto industry. Dealing with a financial crisis. Look, I understand the criticism. I'm not like here to be totally defensive. There's a million things we did that I think were mistakes that I'm happy to talk about. I think the entire Afghanistan surge was a mistake, in sending more troops there and doubling down on a failed counterinsurgency strategy was a mistake. We should have ended that war earlier. That's actually an area where I imagine you, like me, give Joe Biden a lot of credit. As ugly as the end of the war in Afghanistan was, it was the right thing to do to end that war. And by the way, Donald Trump negotiated that agreement. I understand people look back at kind of the math in those early Obama days and think, Jesus Christ, he had 60 senators, he had this size majority in the House, like he could have done everything he wanted. There's some truth to that, but then there's also the fact that a lot of those senators in those days would have been Republicans now. They were pretty conservative people in red states like Nebraska or Louisiana or other places, and it was harder to get those votes. But I hear you. Look, I don't think he's perfect. I don't think the administration was perfect. There's a lot to criticize, and I'm happy to go there.
All right, two more things about Obama. So first of all, Tommy's right in that, you got to give credit where credit is due, and don't get stuck on like, I like Obama, I don't like Obama, I like Biden, I don't like Biden. No, Biden was right to withdraw from Afghanistan. Yeah, it was messy, but they were good. Anyone who withdrew from Afghanistan, corporate media was going to annihilate. Like if someone had a hangnail, they would be like, oh my God, we should have stayed for 20 more years. And Biden had courage to do that. And Obama was great on the Iran deal. That was probably the very best thing that he did. Okay, so now you said, but there's some truth to what I said. So let me ask you this. I don't know that you're going to agree to the premise, but like if I was advising Obama, let's just say hypothetical, right?
He'd love to.
Oh, he would have loved it, yes. I would have said, my God, brother, okay, you had 60, fine, at some point you went down to 59, but you got plenty. You got paid family leaves at 84%. So you can't get one Republican to vote. I mean, remember 74% of Republicans also want paid family leave, the voters do, right? And I would have had a million things that I would have said, please, you have this moment, push harder, right? But he didn't. So I've always been curious, why didn't he push harder? Was it that there's too much pushback from the rest of the Democratic Party? He's worried about what mainstream media is going to say. What was it?
I mean, I think they were pushing hard on a lot of things. I mean, there was a lot of, like you have to remember that moment in time. It felt like there was we were on the brink of a cataclysmic economic event every single day. I mean, I've lost count of the number of meetings I was in where people were like, this time, sir, we think the global economy is going to crash because the Greek government has been lying about its debt for like 20 years, and it's all coming crumbling down as we speak, right? So there's a lot of shit going on. I think it's a fair criticism to say that we waited way too long on working to try to get a bipartisan group to pass the Affordable Care Act instead of just ramming it through via reconciliation. There was a lot of effort put into recruiting kind of a last few holdout Republicans in this effort to like actually engage both parties, to come together, to get people to work together in good faith. When in reality, the entire plan the whole time was Mitch McConnell saying we are going to block every single thing this guy does and try to make him a failure and get to the midterms. So I think, were there some sort of bite-sized things we could have peeled off and passed faster? You're probably right. It was a long time ago. I don't remember sort of like every cut and thrust of that moment, but I take the criticism in good faith. I really do.
Yeah. All right, last thing on Obama. And I love this honest conversation. Like, in the old days, this is hard to do. Everybody was dug into their camps, but we got to do this accounting. Otherwise, we're not going to get to the right answer. So President Obama did defy Israel on the Iran deal, and that was a great deal because we got uranium out of Iran and they couldn't develop nukes. It was enormously successful, and I think that the Israeli lobby didn't want it because they wanted war. They didn't want peace. And the fact that President Obama defied them and went for peace instead, I give him enormous credit for. This is my third time saying it just in this interview, right? But on everything else, President Obama, like all other presidents, Democrat or Republican, blank check. What Israel wants, Israel gets. Okay, my answer again is just like with big pharma and big oil and defense contractors, it's the money, Lebowski. So they have, they give money to President Obama and the rest of Congress. So that's why Obama went along.
I don't think it was the money. I personally, I don't think it was like AIPAC money. I don't think that like they weren't the biggest fans of ours. They're never the biggest fans of Barack Obama. So I don't really think it was that. he comes into office, Bibi Netanyahu becomes prime minister. There were a lot of people who were kind of selling this idea that Netanyahu, as a right-wing kind of hawkish guy, was the kind of leader who could make tough choices and cut a peace deal. And so we engaged in this negotiations process early on. I think it was like 2009 and 2010 that ultimately failed. And then later on, John Kerry engaged in another ultimately fruitless negotiation process over a two-state solution. That failed. You're right that in the interim, the U.S. did what the U.S. has always done, which is shovel weapons to the Israeli government, at billions and billions of dollars. Obama signed a 10-year MOU that I think was like $3.3 billion a year. And then above and beyond that, there was money for the Iron Dome missile defense system and other systems. I think the thinking there was, if you can make Israel feel secure through this defense infrastructure, then you could get them to get comfortable with a Palestinian state. That was obviously self-evidently a failed strategy. I think that it was probably pretty clear then, but obvious with the benefit of hindsight, that Bibi Netanyahu did not want a peace deal. He did not want a Palestinian state. He wanted to be able to tell the right wing of his coalition that he had prevented the creation of a Palestinian state, and that he is one of the most venal, corrupt, cynical, evil leaders on the world stage today, and he has done more damage to Israel, to Gaza, to the Palestinian people, to global security than most people ever could have imagined at the time. But I'm with you; it was a total failure.
Yeah. So look, in the case of Obama, I think that it's the money 98% of the time. But in the case of Obama, I take your point. I don't think that he was obsessed about that in the case of Israel, and you could prove in the pudding because folks who are obsessed about it don't defy Israel as he did on the Iran deal, right? But I think it was more groupthink in that case. So that's why that's why I wanted to press on that for one more sec here. Was there even ever a conversation about cutting off funding to Israel, or was that so unthinkable that that never even came up as an option?
I was not privy to one. Honestly, I think probably at the time it was seen as unthinkable. I mean, what was that? 2015, 2016, there was a US abstention at the UN on a resolution. I can't even remember what it was about creation of a Palestinian state that got everybody all worked up. But no, I mean, look, Jack, the thing that's wild about this is I think you and I think both agree with the majority of genocide scholars who say that what's happening in Gaza is a genocide. And I think you and I have been watching this issue for a very long time. And we've seen, when you see like 27 Democratic senators vote to cut off weapons to Israel, that is both woefully insufficient given what's happening on the ground, but also a sea change politically given where we were 5 years ago. Like Ben Rhodes and I ran around this J Street conference in 2019, and we were trying to get a bunch of Democrats to agree to condition US military assistance to Israel if that assistance was used to annex the West Bank, and they refused to do it. And most of them refused to do it. So here we are many years later. Got it. I got the don't swear sign. Thanks, guys. Sorry about that. That's my bad. I'm used to my network where I say whatever I want. Say way worse than this. So I don't ever remember there being a conversation about cutting off weapons. There should have been. I wish that had been part of the conversation. But like just politically speaking, then it was not something I think you ever heard anyone talk about.
Yeah, we used to curse here too, but we're on
my bad
24-hour channels and that's the rules. But I tend to get my points across strongly enough, I think, without cursing.
Yeah, you have the Riz. You make your point well.
Okay, I don't know about Riz, but thank you. Anyways, back to substance. Look, I want the audience to understand. Ben Rhodes was great on this. Okay, and so what Tommy's saying there is true. And it was important, and so. There's nuance in all of these discussions, but it does lead back to the media because when we think about groupthink, part of that is set by the media, etc. So I am ecstatic about the destruction of mainstream media, and I know a lot of Democratic leadership. In that sense, again, I mean broader groups, not just political leaders, but thought leaders, etc. think, no. Online media, boo, disinformation, misinformation. We can't control the message, we must control the message, right? And mainstream media is beautiful, controls the message perfectly. Israel's the greatest thing that ever happened. Who cares about the Palestinians and their kids, who, let's, and oil companies getting subsidies. I've never heard of it. We're never gonna cover that. Congress gets money from all these PACs and then does exactly what those PACs want. Shh. So I think they've done great damage to this country, and I think we're much better off with online media. Not everyone agrees, obviously, so I'm curious what you think.
I think the destruction of both local and national mainstream media is catastrophic for this country. I think we need as many people as humanly possible digging into what politicians are doing, and we need it to be well funded. I am thrilled about the growth of independent media like you guys, like lots of folks online, on YouTube, they're doing great work. I know folks like you probably talk to the drop site guys all the time. Like, I love that companies like Crooked Media are sprouting up everywhere, but I'm just worried about the reduction in the number of journalists who are doing the tough stuff like FOIAs, like the constant source building, document requests, going to city council meetings. And so I really think it's a both and problem. I have a lot of criticisms of the mainstream media. In my last job, I used to fight with them. Now I rely on them to keep me informed. So I'm not where you are on this one.
Yeah, so well, I think that we got to get better clarification on what we mean by that, right? So if you're defending text like AP, Reuters, that are going out and doing investigative journalism, great, I love it. I want them to be twice as large, 4 times as large, right? There's great independent media that are mainstream adjacent. The Guardian is one of them, and then other folks who are online or independent, like Drop Site News and Intercept, etc. They're not mainstream media, but a lot of them are text and they're investigative journalism. Love it. Okay, we have to fight for real journalism in this country. But in my experience, no one has attacked progressives and populists more than the New York Times, CNN, and MSNBC. I think they're our top opponents. I think they lie about us 24/7. And I don't think they do real journalism. I think that and then what's super obnoxious about them is they love corporate rule, they love the status quo, and then they go, I'm objective. And since you are sticking up for the American people, you are not objective, you're biased, right? So what do you think?
Look, I think that news organizations are entities that are made up by people, right? The people do the work, the people manage them, the people run them. They are flawed, they have biases, they make mistakes. But I would rather more people are doing that kind of work than less. I mean, like for example, 60 Minutes, CBS 60 Minutes. I don't know if you have an opinion on them. Seeing that they, first of all, that corporate ownership has come in and pushed out their longtime senior producer and push them to stop doing tough journalism about Donald Trump. And now Barry Weiss might go over and be the kind of editorial overlord at CBS News. I think that's catastrophic. And on the New York Times, listen, I don't have all the scar tissue you have in terms of what they have or have not said about the left. I do think they do unbelievably important international coverage. Very few people are reporting on what's happening in Sudan on a weekly basis, or they're doing their best to dig into events in Gaza. I know they've made a lot of mistakes there, but I don't know. I think that big institutions like that can actually fund this stuff, it's important.
Yeah, so I think you're right on 60 Minutes. I think you're right that New York Times often does really good investigative reporting and international coverage, right? But two things can be true at the same time. But sure. On the other hand, if you ask them to care about Arab lives, it takes about 2 years for them to put their shoes on. And if you questioning Israel, they it's 18 layers of editorial. Oh my God, what about the feelings of the poor Israelis? Their feelings are so important. New York Times is obsessed with the feelings of Israeli supporters, barely can muster up a year and a half into a genocide concern about Palestinian children that are being slaughtered by the Israelis, slaughtered. And I forget if it was Intercept or Drop Site. I think it was Intercept that did that great story. Whenever Muslims kill anyone, murder, terrorist. New York Times writes, CNN says, right? Whenever it's Israel killing, well, collateral damage, accidentally killed, but it's not a big deal. right? So the framing. Oh, Bernie Sanders, radical. Okay, no, Joe Biden. It's Joe Biden. Grace, Joe Biden. Young, dynamic, right? Come on.
Joe Biden, young, dynamic. Actually, made me laugh very hard. Listen, I hear you. I have great frustrations with a lot of these outlets. I think that. Look, it's funny. I was arguing with a friend today who was telling me that there's like all this anti-Israel bias in U.S. press, and I was like, I just can't tell you how profoundly I disagree. It's just like there's a lot of reporters who cover these issues who are in the IDF. I feel like if we were talking about like Serbia in Kosovo and 60,000 casualties and several month-long sieges multiple times and kids starving to death, like the international conversation would be about like no-fly zones and airstrikes, not like, how we should, manage Netanyahu's politics. So I hear where you're coming from.
All right, beautiful. That's a good start. Love this. Let's keep it going.
Anytime.
Yeah, and as we get it's easy now, right?
I know.
Because we've gotten past some of the groupthink, some of the propaganda, etc. We're now having real conversations, but we're really far from a primary, right? And so when the primary comes, that's when it'll get really interesting. And so we'll have to keep talking so that we have good enough relationship for all parts of the Democratic Party, so that we don't get into these things where folks say, no, you have to bow your head and the other side are evil, etc. So that's my sense of it.
I love that. I'm grateful to you for saying that. I can tell just like, look, I can read between the lines that you have the same scar tissue that I have from like the 2016 and 2020 primaries. And for me, it's like, if you don't believe the furthest left position, it's because you're a bad person or some moral character flaw, or you don't care about such and such thing. And it's like, I think it would be great if we all just sort of depersonalize this stuff a little bit. Like not everybody, just to the left or just to the right to you within the Democratic Party hates you. I think we're all kind of pulling the same direction. You're right, it's easy now and it gets really tough in the primaries, but I think we can do it.
Yeah, and if you're a little too far left or a little too far right within the Democratic Party and that should get you canceled, I'm in a world of trouble. I got people on the left who disagree. I got people on the right who disagree.
I know. You occupy an interesting space, and I like that.
All right, well, God bless. All right, everybody check out Tommy on Pod Save America, Pod Save the World. Go get his book, Democracy or Else. Actually, highly recommended within the TYT community.
Wow. Well, not the outcome we wanted, but nice of you to plug the thing still. We're more in the or else phase, I guess.
Yeah, well, here we are at or else. So there we go.
Not good.
All right, Tommy, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, I'm gonna see you tomorrow.